everybody. How's it going? Yeah, we're streaming. We're live. We're going doing videos, more videos. Last just Monster Hunter One and the my mic is being a dick. Hopefully that I'll yeah. Okay. Hopefully it's good for now. Sorry about that. If there was any staticky noises and stuff, but yeah, unfortunate. Um, is it good? Everyone here can hear me? We're watch. Everything's fine. We're live. Okay, looks like we're good. Uh, Oh, I did not. I finished my script. I did not need to finish replaying Danganronpa. I'm not finished. I mean, like the draft is finished. I do need to go back over it and revise it and make sure it's all like solid. But I was able to finish the script. Yeah, I think talking about it a little bit more on stream helped, and I think rereading Danganronpa Zero helped. Yeah. Um, I guess other channel stuff to talk about real quick is because I'm working on a few videos right now aside from the Danganronpa one, and I think with my next one I'm probably going to reopen my Patreon because I don't have a lot of hours at my current job right now, so my income isn't great. I still have enough money to get by for a while, but I definitely just want some, and it's like I've been trying to get another job and that hasn't been working out, so it's like well, so I basically think of just restructuring my Patreon because a lot of the patron rewards I had before, I don't really want to do, like the backlog builders, and I also just think it's tedious to have the names at the end of the videos, which I guess people like that because it's so common, but like, I see fucking YouTubers with dozens to hundreds of names at the end of their videos, and I'm just like, how do you do that? It's just what's annoying for me just to keep track of the ones that I had. Um, but I am thinking of some other alternative rewards that are easier for me to do, I think. Um, if you have the extra money to support to, even a dollar helps. I appreciate it. If not, and even if you do, just I'd wait until my next video because that way you can see the updated Patreon with like here's the new rewards because the old ones are I'm throwing those out, most likely. So yeah, I just wanted to update that. But especially because of that, I'm probably gonna work more on the channel because I've always been trying to do a lot, like because I have a bunch of different goals and things I want to do, and I've been trying to work on them all gradually. And I think I'm gonna, at least for the time being, shift more to doing YouTube stuff because the nice thing about YouTube is that I can ideally like monetize certain, even if like say so one of the videos idea I have is I talked about it's like doing like here's my favorite Shin Megami Tensei characters, which was just a way to like I'm playing through this franchise. Here's a way I can get something out of it that's not just my experiences. Like I could have here's a video that's like going through all my favorite characters from each game, right? So if I say, oh, I'm working on a video, then that can be I can still go through media and stuff, and if I get it, I don't know. Hopefully, and one of the things I was thinking about with the new Patreon stuff was a patron exclusive Discord server. And one thing, because I did have the like I've been talking about my old video ideas and some of my current video ideas, but I was thinking I might be even more open about that to my patrons because like they're paying me to make videos. Um, yeah, that's about update for channel stuff. As far as the streams, I think what I'm gonna do is because in March there should be a Steam sale for spring, and when that happens, I'm gonna try and pick up Death Come True and World's End Club, the Kodaka games, two of the ones that are I don't have and are both on Steam. Um, so then I'll probably start streaming one of those in March after I buy them. In the meantime, I'll probably just do more old video ideas, and just because like I said, I have like 200 documents to go through of like ideas, so that could last me for a good while. Um, Yeah, so and yeah, Traverse just commenting on the thumbnail. So the two videos for today is one is casualized, a Monster Hunter World gameplay analysis, which was me sort of responding to some of the discourse about it being like mostly on 4chan, not directly, and I don't really like some of the things about the video, but it's mostly me going into the gameplay. I don't know, I had this thing because I remember talking about it before where I just talked a lot about the gameplay when I definitely don't think I was equipped to it. At least in this case, I had a book I referenced that gave me some ideas to think about, but I'm sure it could be better. We'll see. And the other one is it is Love Lab. It because there was a discoursey tweet about the blackface scene, and I wanted to talk about that. There's one major issue I have with that video that I'm really not looking forward to. The rest of it I remember was okay, I think. But we will see. So I guess just okay. I'm gonna start playing the video. Let me know if the audio is bad because I want it to be like a little quieter than my voice so that they're easy to distinguish, but I also want you guys to be able to hear it. So, and I don't want it to be too loud for me. So let us get started on that. Monster Hunter is a big deal. It always was in Japan, but with its newest iteration, it's finally getting more recognition in the West, and that's huge for the future of the franchise. Monster Hunter has changed, and how Capcom perceives the success and failure of those changes will no doubt be informing future developments and iterations of the franchise. And while the consumer can vote with their dollar, they can also engage in internet argument, and we all know how well that goes. So yeah,
I
we
forgot
need
I
to
did
talk
that.
about
That was dumb.
casualization. Whether you feel the term applies to Monster Hunter World or not, the conversation around the subject tends to push
See, I feel
backwards
like
on.
that joke maybe could have been okay, turn up the video volume slightly. Okay. Or actually, I know I can do that. I'll just turn up the desktop audio a little bit. Okay. So I was gonna say, um, yeah, see, because like I don't know, because comedy with me is like I've talked about it before, where it's like my jokes have to be either absurd or I have to be making fun of something. Like part of the reason the tirade on Fairy Tale and the tirade on the tirade were funny because it was mean spirited. Um, but I feel like that joke might have been better executed if there was voice acting. But like doing good voice acting is hard. Like I don't really think I'm great at it. Like I can barely deliver my scripts. So I don't know. Sorry, just self-critiquing that joke because it was text-based and because it is an audio. It's like audio-visual. It's a video. But I guess like maybe I'm thinking about it audio-wise because my videos are generally pretty simply edited, and they're the kind of videos that you don't need to be paying attention to the visuals for. Um, Supposedly. So, I mean, not that I'd make them with that in mind, but I've just been told or heard that that's kind of how they're received. Which I don't blame. I've listened to video like I'll download it on my phone and then listen to it while doing chores or something, right? Like, and a lot I can still enjoy the video for that way, even if I'm not getting the visual at all. Which probably not ideal, but that's it is easy to do that. So because so if you were watching this video that way, it's like you wouldn't get that joke at all because you're not watching it. So anyway,
Both sides. The accusation of casualization is one that invalidates the enjoyment of new fans of the franchise, or even old ones who happen to like the changes. By claiming that World isn't a real Monster Hunter game, it spreads an elitist mentality, raising the question of what World has lost in the transition to the current console generation, but in a dismissive way without actually addressing it.
see, well, my problem with this video is because the way I use the word casualization is like I'm trying to create and define this term, but like it's really funny. The ultimate conclusion of the video is that yeah, Monster Hunter World's casualized, uh, and because I guess like because by my own definition, it but like I feel like I mean at least because again part of this video is responding to what I felt were dismissive takes, right? Um, but because I remember when I first put this video out, because I even was inviting comments because I wanted more people to discuss the topic, but people and all I remember was people just complaining about shit that I like, and just not even really engaging with the video and just using it as a place to voice their gripes with the game. Um, and so I remember being this was probably one of the videos because I don't really pay attention to comments anymore, and honestly, like
this video is probably an example as to why. Just because maybe there's some good comments now, but I just remember for a little while after I published the video, there was just nobody having a discussion worth having. I maybe I have some old comments. Maybe I might look those up afterwards. Um, but it's like, yeah, it's just so at least like from the start, because like I feel like a lot. I think another because I was still around 4chan at this time, and I remember another one of the discussions that really stuck with me for some. So if you played Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, I remember there was basically when Raiden gets stunned, it tells you like to move the two sticks basically, and because there's some like quick time event stuff, or like even when you do the Zandatsu and cut out the spines, you hit the X button, right? But I remember for one, it's like when Raiden's stunned, you have to like twirl the sticks. And I remember seeing a discussion on 4chan about it, and it was really interesting because there was someone who didn't like it, and I feel like maybe they weren't explaining themselves well enough, or maybe they were, and I'm just misremembering. But how I remember the issue, what because I thought about it too, because I'd also played the game. My issue with it was that it wasn't clear if you succeeded or not, like what actually, like because it says move the six. Do you move them slow? Do you move them fast? Do you like it there's so many like interpretations of how to get out of it that it's not really clear. Where if it's like hit the X button, and if you succeed, you hit the X. If you succeed and you hit the X button, you're like, okay, that works. And if you fail, you probably didn't hit the X button, right? It's very clear as to what. But I remember in the discussion on 4chan, the response wasn't like, again, it was dismissive. It was like, just get good, don't get hit, right? Well, it's like that doesn't solve the issue of the game necessarily, with the potential issue of clarity, because I haven't played the game in a minute. I haven't looked into it, but I don't know actually how you get stunned, because I felt like if I went too fast, it didn't work. If I went too slow, sometimes it didn't work. I don't remember how to get out of a set from. I guess you move the sticks until it works, right? Which isn't, again, that's not helpful. Oh yeah, and because yeah, some guy, big guy mentioning world being challenging. That's the thing. This video came out before Iceborne, because I think when you really get into Iceborne, Furious Rajang, Fatalis, Alatrion, like I think once you get through to those, it's like, oh, I struggled. Elatron was I like the two times I most struggled with Elatron was in 3 Ultimate. I fought Elatron because we had a rule with my friends where we wouldn't do solo content to get ahead of of each other basically. Um, so when we were late into high rank, I couldn't do the G rank content on my own because I was waiting for my friends to catch up, and so I literally just had, but I was so into the game and I was just couldn't put it down. I literally ended up beating the village Elatrion, which has like G rank stats but with high rank gear. I think back and I was like, how the fuck did I do that? But I did. But it was the just beating World Elatrion just at all with one friend felt fucking impossible because of the damage checks, and we. And Fatalis, I don't. Did we beat? No, we beat the first Fatalis where they give you extra like 5 carts instead of 3. But I don't think I ever beat Fatalis with only 3 carts. So, and maybe I'm miscounting because of insurance, but I remember there's the first one. We beat that one. So yeah, this game came out before World really got hard. Never mind, because I think you also had the Arc Tempered quest. I don't even know if Behemoth was out when I made this video, because Behemoth was really hard. Well, Tempered Behemoth especially. Another monster I'm amazed that I beat. But like Arc Tempered Volcana and Valhazak were both really strong. Like, I made this video before it really got difficult, and I wasn't really like addressing that. And I don't really talk about the monsters. I'm like so I don't think, but yeah, I need to watch some of this video, more of this video to remember. But yeah, that was just more talking about like why I sort of came to this video, because even if like I don't like what I say in this video, like I don't know yet, I'm at least glad that I'm not being dismissive, right? I'm not saying this game is casualized, therefore it's bad, right? Or I'm trying to approach it in good faith, and I'm trying to have an actual discussion, because, like, again, with the Metal Gear Rising example, I didn't see a good discussion happening on 4chan because I felt like one side was being like the elitist, like get good, just don't get hit, right? Like, can't you just dismiss any fault of a game that involves like healing or like Vindy had a problem before with Bloodborne, with how and he doesn't like the consumable healing items in the Souls games. Like, so he doesn't like, he likes Demon Souls and Bloodborne less for that reason. And it would be really shitty to just say, just get good, don't get hit. Like that, you can't talk about healing in the Souls games now, because you shouldn't be getting hit at all. Like, that's not how playing those games works, right? Again, it's a dismissive discussion. I really didn't like that. Yeah, anyway.
And the pushback is no better, with world defenders claiming that the original games were archaic mediocrity, and that Monster Hunter is only now a good game.
See, okay, I don't remember if I saw takes like that for sure. Like, or I don't remember what they were, but I definitely feel like I mean, that's true. Not even just with Monster Hunter. With people have problems going back to old games in general. Like, again, I'm playing Shin Megami Tensei now, and every time I look on backlog, I see reviews saying that the game, like of Shin Megami Tensei, or these old games. And obviously, they have their fans, but they also have people going like, "This game sucks," right? And it's like, I like the games, and but there's always just like perspective, because like I struggle to go back to Freedom. Like, I can play it, but obviously I'd have an easier time with like Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite, because those were my first Monster Hunter games. But I can absolutely see why, like, because I played Generations Ultimate and World with Indy, and he had no interest in going back much further than that, except for maybe try briefly, like specifically the Wii version, because of I know the video he saw on it, but he brought up how like it had some interesting things about it, and the online especially. But I can understand why people don't go back to old games. But again, I don't like the dismissiveness of just like, it's worse, it's bad, right? Because like I think another Dragon Quest, the original Dragon Quest, I like it. I don't love it, but I feel like every time I see people bring it up, they talk about how like awful it is, and it's like, I don't think it's awful at all. I think it's a very like it's a quick, pure JRPG experience, and I enjoy it. And I still like, I could go back and play it again and be like, yeah, Dragon Quest. Even if it's like even if it's right now, it's my second least favorite game out of the four I've played, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if every single Dragon Quest game I played after this was better than it. But like, it's not bad, and so because yeah, I guess that's where I came from with this video, because I both enjoyed the older games and I liked World a lot. So it's like I like I liked them all. Like, yeah, obviously I have my preferences, but yeah.
As if the originals became a cult favorite and one of the best-selling franchises in Japan on accident. Both sides of the argument have some merit to them. The old games had archaic design decisions that desperately needed an update, while World has changes that are certainly questionable.
Yeah,
But in my hyperbolic example between
zones and loading
representations of
screens.
actual arguments I've seen, there's only dismissive claims and destructive attitudes. And if we want to compare new and old, I want to do it with a forward-thinking mindset. Like Tri's changes once set the standard for the franchise looking forward, through its revamped hitboxes if nothing else, World's mark on the franchise is not one that's going to go away. So expect the occasional constructive critique in hopes of finding ways to account for the changes while both satisfying as many fans as possible without losing what made the franchise so good in the first place. But in order to evaluate those changes beyond personal preference, we need some kind of standard. So firstly, I need to ask the question, what is casualization?
Yep, here's where I come up my own.
As the altering of work practices of that regular work.
Wait, hold on. I think, yeah, this is clearly not helpful. Or no, maybe not. Hold on. Yeah, I don't.
Employed on a casual and short-term basis. Well, that's unhelpful.
I
So
don't-
to
I
find
don't
something
get
more
it.
specific, let's take this article from Ina Global,
Okay.
which takes a look at casualization on an industry-wide discussion, defining the casual game as one meant to attract people to gaming, noting Nintendo's simplification of gameplay through the likes of Brain Age and Wii Sports as a
Interesting.
form of
Because that's getting into what I've been talking about before with Danganronpa, like when I did my Ultra Sparagos video, and I talk about how it's like, compared to other like third person horror games, it's got simpler gameplay, and it's not even like probably not even as like scary, quote unquote, but it's like, again, it's for newer fans in a way. Like it's there's the media mix, like everything is a potential entry point, right? So okay,
casualization.
I wouldn't have made
Which
that
is to
point back
say,
then.
simplification
this
with the
video.
purpose of encouraging new fans to enter the medium or franchise. The idea of
Oh,
attracting...
see, I guess there's a problem, because I don't think I go back to this at the end of the video. I'll have to see, because like Monster Hunter World is literally trying to get new fans to the franchise. It succeeded. It's Capcom's best-selling game ever. Like, the franchise that has literally put out some of the most iconic franchise: Resident Evil, Street Fighter, Mega Man, Devil May Cry. Like, literally, like everyone knows these games. If you play games, you know these games. Even if you don't play games, Resident Evil has had movies. Mega Man is like, you know, his franchise is basically dead, but he's still an iconic character. And Monster Hunter still outsold them all. This one game, right? So I don't know if I come back to that.
Attracting new
But
customers
yeah.
is obvious and expected from a business standpoint, but intent of changes can only be assumed without evidence such as interviews. And even then, what matters at the end of the day is how the changes affect the game, not the reason they were made for. The potential simplification is ultimately what needs to be addressed. So, what is simplification in regards to gameplay? What it isn't is streamlining. In older Monster Hunter games, carving was accomplished by pressing circle. So in order to carve multiple times, you had to hit the button multiple times. But now you can hold the button to continuously carve. It's convenient, but such minor change should not be frowned upon. I also don't think simplification lies in accessibility. That's a more difficult topic, but when I refer to accessibility, I think of options that don't affect gameplay. Having resolution, screen size, and volume sliders, for instance, make the game more accessible on a technical
Dark
level.
Souls?
By lowering settings, it allows players with less up-to-date hardware to play the game more easily. The existence of controllers for disabled players or settings for color blindness also increase availability. These aren't gameplay-focused matters, because I think it's fair to define simplification in regards to games as the removal or reduction of meaningful player choice or agency. Gameplay changes are
That's what I define casual, or I guess casualization has a negative as okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that that makes sense with just like, you know, success and what Traverse is saying about success and failure being relative to each product and the intentions of the work, or because I would say like I don't know if I ever looked up interviews, but just you know I don't know. Yeah, I just remember having the idea like because I remember argument my friend made was just the fact that it's focusing on graphical fidelity, which obviously is pretty notable to big Western game releases, right? Like you know, you wouldn't call it a AAA game if it looked like fucking Wind Waker, right? And again, Wind Waker, great game, but it's not what the people who buy like a lot of popular games like are looking for. They just want that bigger, you know, Spider-Man 2 having, you know, The Last of Us, in Call of Duty. Like I just feel like these games aim to be like really visually like having grounded realistic styles and high fidelity, like I said. So Monster Hunter is closer to that. Um, and yeah, we'll see what about your mention of the killer responding to the definition, I guess, because we'll see how what I say because I do not remember.
are
Anyway.
inevitable from iteration to iteration, but a change doesn't have to simplify the game. But we do still need to talk about what a meaningful gameplay choice is, and where changes regarding streamlining and accessibility fall relative to simplification. Options like screen resolution or brightness settings don't affect gameplay, thus there's nothing to simplify. And difficulty settings like cheats or hard mode are an interesting conversation, but not a relevant one for Monster Hunter. Difficulty itself is very relative, as what I find easier or more difficult will not reflect on all players, especially with the variants of weapon types that give players an
Says the Mew just made a bunch of Danganronpa videos talking about how easy they were. But yeah, I guess I just something I noticed about the wording was when I mentioned gameplay, like I guess I'm specifically referring to gameplay mechanics because obviously like how you play the game, you know, like if it's like I don't know, like because I was just thinking like if you have two players playing on the same monitors and the games are different resolutions or brightness settings, like sometimes like if you're playing a you know a Souls game and this darkness setting is too dark, you literally can't fucking see anything, right? That affects your play of the game, but it doesn't change the mechanics of the game. If that's what I was trying to say, and I don't know if that got across, but
easier or more difficult time depending on the monster. Pink Rathian loses her spine with her tail cut, but you aren't doing that with a hammer. As for streamlining, what separates a streamlined alteration from a simplified one is in how that change alters choice. Being able to register armor sets or swap decorations without paying is streamlining, because in order to reach point B from point A, the only
I think
meaningful
another
player input required
term people use for streamlining is like quality of life changes, because it doesn't again like I say here, it's like it's not making the game easier, but it's making the act of playing the like the parts around the game easier, I guess.
Is time,
probably explain it
because
what
the
am I
player
doing.
cannot alter their actions in between those points to result in a more favorable outcome at the risk of a less favorable one. Putting on an armor set that you're
Well,
familiar
I
with.
guess you can argue because I remember one comment I got said like they thought it was casualizing for because basically in the old games with Lao Shenlong and Fatalis, in order to carve them, they had 3 different carve points on their very long body, and you needed to crouch to carve. Otherwise, you literally wouldn't get all your carves before the quest ended. Um, and they thought because that like that just needed a very like highly specific level like trivia bit basically. Um, and otherwise, you wouldn't get all the rewards for killing the monster. And don't remember if I responded to them, but my personal take on that was that I don't think scamming the player out of their rewards because they didn't know a minor detail about carving that you literally never need at any other point, because it just makes you carve slightly faster if you're crouched. And since then, they've moved away from that. Jen Moran only had 2 carving points, even though he also had 9 carves, and I'm pretty sure in like World with Fatalis, like they just don't. That's not a thing anymore. They just have 1 carving point, and unless you cut off the tail or something, that's a little different. So they've made it easier, but again, I don't think like that. I don't think that's like a major, because I was even just thinking about with this where it's like with the armor sets, if you have to rebuild your armor set every time, it's like, oh, your decoration was on the wrong piece of armor or whatever, and now you don't have the skill. Like in the A and B, if you fuck up, you're now weaker. But like again, I don't think that's necessarily interesting or additive to the game to like consider that a like such a meaningful design, because that's just frustrating. You abandon the quest, you fix your skill, and then you go back into it, or you just try and toughen out the quest with your weaker skill. Like I feel like just in this case, like memorizing that one little detail, like that's not where the crux of the gameplay is. It's about fighting the monsters, and just forgetting your equipment because they're registering sets wasn't a thing. Like I don't know, that just doesn't seem interesting to me. So
With piece by piece, decoration by decoration is tedium, and there is no negative impact to the actual set of choices in gameplay by changing it, so its removal is not a form of simplification. But when it comes to slaying a monster, while point B, the monster being dead or
Yep, I just
captured,
explained it.
ultimately
I
never
don't know.
changes, the path to that point is chock full of all kinds of interesting choices. Weapons, armor, items, gear, move memorization, combos, pattern recognition, environmental understanding. Mastery or impotence will decide whether point B is reached in good time, if at all. So, by defining casualization and
Oh yeah,
simplification in
that
regards to
fucking the
meaningful player
monsters
choice
running
and
against the
agency,
walls.
we can start to move forward the discussion a little bit. There's a lot to go through, so let's start with
To
a spot
explain
of
that
game.
for someone who hasn't played the old Monster Hunter games, basically, if the zone had a wall that went at a diagonal and a monster ran at the diagonal, they would slide against it. So you had to be aware of You had to have that situational awareness in the old games, where in the newer games, it's much more likely that they won't do that. So it's less dangerous for the player in that way, because I've even seen an old parody comic where there was just 2 people on a sidewalk and a car like hits the wall and then it slides against the wall and hits both of them, and it's like Monster Hunter, just to get at the absurdity, because everyone has to deal with it. I'll just to show that again,
If
like
mental understanding. Mastery or impotence will decide whether point B is reached in good
'cause,
time, if at all.
or no,
So,
maybe it wasn't
by
doing that, but it looked like it was kind of
defining
running against the
simplification
wall.
in regards
So,
to
oh well.
meaningful player choice and agency, we can start to move forward the discussion a little bit. There's a lot to go through, so let's start with a spot of gameplay that's been a sore spot to newcomers since the days of the PS2 and good old freedom. The classic potion flex is a saucy bit of character animation that's well in line with the juxtaposition of weighty animations and more naturally proportioned characters with their zany, expressive, and exaggerated body movements. But it does beg the question of why doesn't the hunter just drink the damn thing and move on with his life instead of taking another fireball to the face? The time spent healing is no accident. From hitting the button to the player regaining their character's movement, it takes 3.5 seconds, meaning at least as much time is needed to safely get off the potion. What this achieves is instilling the player with a sense of deliberation and foresight. Mashing the button mid-fight without thought or care is only going to end in suffering, so the only way to properly heal would be to time the potion used as to safely avoid damage, which requires monster knowledge, prediction, and a bit of luck. Or at least, a bit of not being unlucky. Now, World has made several alterations, but a key change regarding zones is absolutely crucial to understanding both the reasons for the change and the ramifications for it. This was specifically brought up in a pre-release interview, in which director Yuya Tokada mentions the addition of movement while drinking a potion, specifying that no longer
Yeah,
is there a
because it's
safe
like
place to
I'm
hide
glad
by
I didn't
popping
just
out
like
to relative.
talk about the systems in isolation, and that's probably what I was responding to too. Of just like, oh, drinking the potion is faster and easier than it was in the old games, and it's like, yeah, here they are
Safety.
bringing up in an
A more
interview why
experienced
they
player
did
might
that.
scoff at the very notion of leaving the zone just to heal, but it is a choice offered by the original game design. And to get at the ramifications of that choice, let's break down the difference between hard and soft
I've
punishments.
had
An
to do
idea I
that.
first became aware of in a critical analysis of Wario Land 4 by
There's
Daniel
a
Johnson.
book I brought up.
Effectively, a
I read
hard
it.
punishment
I didn't
is
read
one
the whole
with
thing
tangible and
because
objective losses.
a lot of
such
it
as
is just like level breakdowns, and I wasn't going to play the game alongside the book, but I remember reading it and just the general parts and finding it interesting. And it literally ends with just a bunch of individual essays that I remember at the time I was like, these could be videos, right? Like you could just adapt this into a video. And it would be like, as like one of them was discussing like differentiating Wario and Mario's characterization based on like how their power ups worked, and some other gameplay things. And I was like, yeah, that's good. And especially in like 2018 when I would have made this video. Um,
health or resources, whereas soft punishments are less tangible, such as loss of time. And it's in managing that risk of losing health and guarantee in losing time that separates a more experienced player from the novice. By leaving the zone to take a potion and bearing the brunt of the loading screen, the player incurs a higher soft punishment in the time taking, something a player who takes a higher risk by drinking
Word
in the zone would rather
mispronunciation.
avoid. But there's a trade-off in safety. Leaving the zone guarantees that there won't be more damage taken in trying to heal, while a missed timing might lead to both further hard and soft punishments as the player must recover from their mistake, through both damage and the time needed to heal back up, if not the even more major hard and soft punishments found in carting when your hunter falls. Now, this idea can carry over into mini-games, but with World, the lack of zones means how long a monster might chase you has more random chance involved, thus the addition of the ability to drink while moving, which negates the potential soft punishments of bad RNG, if perhaps a bit too well. Potion drink length has increased, taking half a second longer for the confirmation visual and sound than the entire animation did in previous games, but the trade-off is that movement is now possible while drinking, though at the expense of stamina if running, and at a slower speed in all accounts. Adding to mobility is roll canceling, which can stop
I was about to say, like, I talked about that, right? And it's
or
like,
end
yes, of
one
course
that's
I
already
did.
been completed to save a few frames and get right back into the action.
I will say,
roll
it was kind of, I do think even now it's kind of interesting that I did go in this level of depth, because I guess I feel like I probably wouldn't nowadays if I talked about games. Am I saying anything major? Because again, they talked about this in the interview. It is what it is. Okay.
Canceling is a great addition as it increases the options for choices and outcomes. Canceling mid-drink expends the potion even if its full benefits aren't achieved, so while a timely roll might save the player some damage, poor timing might result in failure to get away or ending a potion drink unnecessarily. Novice players won't know the nuances, intermediate players may make mistakes trying to take advantage of them, and more advanced players will know exactly how to best manage the mechanics for optimal play. Roll canceling is a great addition as it increases the options for choices and outcomes. Canceling mid-drink expends the potion, even if its full benefits aren't achieved, so while a timely roll might save the player some damage, poor timing might result in a failure to get away or ending a potion drink unnecessarily. However, the walking movement itself doesn't offer quite as much, and for a simple reason. The time it takes to drink a potion while standing, while walking, and while running is completely identical. The only difference is that running takes up stamina.
I think I see where this is going.
As a result, movement allows for more freedom to avoid monsters while healing, so while timing is still needed, the ability to move isn't offset enough. Because drink time is consistent, there's no reason to stand.
I guess that's kind of like, because what I'm basically saying is that, like, I guess I'm looking for them to be balanced, because I'm trying to argue regarding whether or not World is casualized, whether it's easy or not. And so my first argument was like, hey, look, there's more choices allowed for this new system because it is slightly slower. But what I'm about to argue is that, like, if you move, the potion drinking should be even slower. Like I guess if you're running, it would take 5 seconds instead of 4 to fully drink a potion. But instead it's the same amount of time. So there's no reason not to run unless you are already in the ideal position. Which I guess again that you could say that limits choices because when you do run, like now you're drinking a potion slower, it's like, well, do you need to stop and drink it as fast as possible, or do you want to run? And so again, that's where it's casualized comes from. But again, the game, I don't, especially like think about the casualized definition I brought up earlier and then discarded about like being easier to allow new players into the game. It's like, yeah, that's what it's doing. Like I kind of just, I think I end the video off just saying, yeah, it's casualized, but like I really don't think that's a bad thing because the game was popular. It did get hard. Even if the base mechanics, like they did make the monsters are faster. Like they are. There's a level at and especially like with some of the other ones being harder. That like I don't know what people would say is like because I think from my memory the game I struggled the most with was 4 Ultimate. Because the Apex monsters were just really brutal, and Generations Ultimate had fucking Hyper Silver Rathalos. Or no, this was just regular Generations. We literally made armor specifically to beat Rathalos. Like we went out of our way to fight to get like the fucking Rathalos X armor from the Rathalos cross armor from the cross monster, the fucking Dread King, and which is specifically like a Rathalos Slayer set, and he's still like we had like 3 carts because of insurance, so we were able to and like less than 5 minutes left in the quest. Like he was fucking impossible. So just like so I don't know, and especially like another I don't know if I addressed this, but I remember that a lot of because I a lot of this argument like the idea that I'm responding to is based off of 4chan, and the thing with that is because a lot of people on 4chan with Monster Hunter like Freedom Unite would have been playing alone because Try had online capability and 4 Ultimate had online capability, but the oldest fans, the people like I wasn't able to really play online with other people with Freedom Unite. It was possible at a certain point. I've done it at least once, but it wasn't easy. And so as a result, it's like it's harder to play the game alone because the cats are only so useful and you're fighting a really tough lane. So a lot of people who went through the G rank content did it alone, so they had to get better at the game than they would have had to go through World, where you have 4 players all coordinating. And it's Monster Hunter. It's kind of a casual game in the first place. I don't remember I've even brought that up because it's like, I mean, it's kind of like Pokemon, more so than Pokemon even, because where it's like anyone can just sort of pick it up and do stuff, and there's like the easier stuff like just going through Pokemon or doing just low rank Monster Hunter. Like there's that you could just do, and because it's such a popular game that it attracts like younger players and players who are less good at it. But there's more if you go deeper with it. Like with Pokemon, if you get into competitive, the mechanic, there's a lot of interesting mechanics there. But so I think with Monster Hunter it has that similar sort of idea in that like when you get into G rank it is harder, but a lot of people aren't probably. I don't know. See, I never looked at the stats, or now I wonder if they ever did that. Like if they would do that for like a Switch version and just being like, here's what what players did what content. Because I know on Steam it's specifically going to be like gamers who like there's not going to be as many like what children on Steam, Japanese children specifically. So yeah.
Still, unless the hunter is already in the perfect place. Even if low on stamina or hit with water or ice blight, which affects stamina recovery, the player should always be trying to get into a better position or get to relative safety. Since it's easier to find openings through added movement and roll canceling, leading to no reason to stand still, there is less meaningful choice. The window for openings is wider, and the difference in time taken is so vastly offset by the lack of cost to movement that some nuance is ultimately no longer there. It's not irredeemable. With some tweaking, we can see how the system might be better served in the future. The most drastic change would be to remove movement and return to near instant healing like older games, but keep roll canceling. This would make it work like whetstones. Using one in World locks the hunter to the ground, but a roll can cancel out of it, allowing a soft punishment of having to take more time to use the whetstone again in exchange for potentially avoiding the hard punishment. It would increase player choice without removing other options, as the player would still have to choose the proper time to heal, but would retain the added nuances of roll canceling with the risks and rewards that come with them. However, that's an unlikely change, as removing drinking movement would likely be seen as a step back. So a change that would keep the added choice of movement while still requiring a lot more fine-tuning.
Just as far as like the game playing the game goes, I do like being able to run well, especially with fighting fucking shit like a lion, where you're dealing with stuff. To run and heal at the same time is really, I don't know, it just feels nice, and I like to, like I can understand why that change was made, and so even if it's bad or casualized, like I like it. So
variance in drinking time. Generally speaking, faster movement would result in longer drink time, which would make the game of balancing hard and soft punishments a matter of small choices during the drink. Running could result in a drink taking 2 or even 3 times longer, while standing
that's a
still
lot.
would serve as the standard.
That's a lot.
It could even be
Oh my
visually
god.
represented by the hunter running off balance while attempting to drink, and a slightly staggered refilling of the bar. It already accelerates in the
Well,
second
you
half of
learn
the drink,
programming
so
and do
having
it,
it
buddy.
shake lightly while
Playtest
running
that.
would tip off the player that they should be keeping their movement down to drink faster. This gives the player a good reason to consider standing still, and reasons to consider moving based on the situation and their knowledge of the battle's pace, allowing for more choices and options without removing what's already there. Now, while I've said my piece on potions, health in general is affected by the expansion or addition of other systems. Specialized tools in particular offering players a whole set of equipment not available in prior games. Even just conceptually, the variety in itself offers an array of meaningful choice, and the recharge and usage time offers room for balancing. But for the purposes of discussion, we can divide them into 3 separate types and break them down one by one. The first up is the boosters, which
Oh yeah, 2 things I want to respond to in chat. Because one earlier, because Traverso, you mentioned how, or let me, when it comes to games, books, and stuff that I'm really into, I can admit to not being sensitive to others who are either aren't as acclimated and having times of like, oh, they're spoon feeding this, and I don't like that. I just remembered a story that I had relevant to that with my little brother, my younger brother, because he also played Monster Hunter, but he only played it in on the PSP. So he played Freedom 2, Unite, and then Portable Third. And he's tried World, but he couldn't get into it, and it literally was just like, man, they have it so easy. Like they don't have to go farming after. Like he liked the jank and the stuff that because he just wasn't able to click with the Monster Hunter because he tried 4 Ultimate as well and World, and he just wasn't able to click with him. He liked the jank, I guess. So I was just thinking about that because he mentioned the idea of spoon feeding. And another thought I even had was just with One Piece, where like, so someone like me, a lot of the they just dropped a hint about Blackbeard, and that I've seen people theorize, but I brought up in my Blackbeard video, and like, oh, what does Ace versus Blackbeard look like with this in mind, right? And he just dropped a hint that it might be true, and because to me it might be obvious, but to like a casual reader, they might, like, there's so many weird like some of the details piece that have come to that thing are just definitely like really small, and fucking one of them's in like in supplemental stuff, so it's understandable that someone might not notice those things, right? So I don't know, it's just because like I remember Oda even talking about how it's like he can't watch YouTubers because he doesn't want to get the idea that the average fan has this level of knowledge of the series, because he wants it to be more accessible. And as far as yeah, I guess with Pokemon being in difficulty and people complaining about it being handholdy, like one thing I thought of was what's different about it is the loss of having the game manuals, I think, because like when you bought Pokemon Red and Blue, you had a little game manual that had information, like it had the type chart in it, right? So when people complain about in the newer games, because when you fight a Pokemon for the second time, like the first time you fight a Pokemon, it will not tell you what type it is, but after that, it's in your Pokedex. You could just like look at it and see the type, and like if you didn't have that option, you could still just like look. It's basically replacing the manual, right? Like, and there were some games I remember, like Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles on the PSP literally just had a strategy guide, a small like 2-page strategy guide for the first game, because it was an older JRPG. So there was like, hey, we don't want players to get lost playing this remake of an older game. So let's just put the fucking strategy guide in the manual. It's those manuals aren't a thing anymore. So it makes sense that the games themselves are just explaining themselves better, because that's not a part of games anymore. But yeah. And yeah, yeah, and just go back to what I was talking about earlier with Jank, is just like, because like again, I'm maybe because Travis just mentioned how he struggled to get into generations 1 and 2, because he started with 3, and yeah, those two games do have remakes that just like, even as someone who can still play those old games, like I literally after hold on, what was my timeline? I'm pretty sure I played through up to, if not Gold and Silver, then it through and Crystal, then Sapphire. I replayed those before Scarlet and Violet, or at least some of them. Um, and I ended up playing a bunch of. It was actually a ROM hack of Pokemon Blue technically, but I played Pokemon Green. It swapped out the sprites and made some other changes to basically make it like green. And I played most of it. I didn't beat it because I was playing on my Game Boy EverDrive, and I fucked up with the save state system and lost like fucking 16 hours of progress. And I like it literally took me back to the beginning of the game. Um, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. I was in Saffron Tower or something, or I was like getting close. I was over closer to the end of the game than I was the beginning, and I lost all my progress. So I haven't touched the game since. But I grew up with those games, so I have no problem playing the older ones, even if like, but even then, when going through like Gold, so especially when I hit Sapphire, there was a level of relief I felt because like the mechanics were finally close to what I like understand to be Pokemon, because I have been playing the games for so long, and kind of like having you know that relief of like I don't know, like, oh no, that was a relief I felt. I remember watching a video where it only had the audio coming in on one side deliberately, and then when I felt it on the other side, I felt a relief because it's like, oh, thank God, because that's I'm just being used to like a normal thing, and then getting that normal thing again after so long. Like I really liked like oh my God, poison works. It just hurts you at the end of every turn instead of just after you attack. Because Gen 1 and 2 is they have so many just jank mechanics and things that focus energy not working as correct as it should. So like it just there's a level of like, I guess, pressure, not pressure, like just feel there's a ick feeling playing those games because I'm constantly having to keep things in mind because I'm more used to later mechanics. Um, and not having to do that and just playing like, the games that work correctly. It's like, yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Allows hunters to place
how
down
much more of
fountains
this
that
video
offer
do you have
benefits to
left?
the party as a whole.
Oh, we're almost halfway
The
there.
Affinity Booster and Cleanser just need to be
Oh,
in an accessible
almost
spot,
an hour through the
as they
stream.
don't need
Jesus
to be particularly
Christ.
stood in to be useful. But the Health Booster restores health at a slow rate. Layering health
I'm
options
taking
with
my
even
sweet
more
ass
choice.
time.
A player
If
could
this is a
incur
3
more
hour
soft
stream, it's a
punishment
3
by
hour
standing in
stream.
place doing nothing while the monster is off elsewhere. Use a potion to heal up even faster, use a whetstone to manage time wisely, or otherwise try and be
The
useful.
healing fountains are so
Adding the
nice.
monster into the equation makes the choices more interesting, as the player can now balance.
See, Rise makes a lot of good changes, but I do sometimes miss World because I like the gear. I like so a lot of people don't like the clutch claw, but I kind of like the rhythm to the fight that it adds with just like when the monster's not raging, mash it into the wall. Oh, it's pissed off again. Fight it while it's raging. Oh, it's not raging. Mash it into the wall. Like, I don't know. It added a nice push and pull to the fight that I kind of miss. I like Rise a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know.
Staying out of
World's
harm's
something
way
cool,
with
special.
staying in the
So
healing fountain.
Iceborne especially.
Given the time limit and recharge rate, all tools could stand to be timed well, as
Oh,
failure
I
to
break
use
into
them
the.
properly
That's
means
right.
wasted time while the monster runs away, making the tool less effective for the time being, as a chunk of time is wasted on running after the monster. And like choosing between the more support-oriented hunting horn or the powerful greatsword, picking between the health booster and affinity booster is a matter of team makeup and relative skill. The stronger team can make shorter hunts out of the affinity booster, while having 4 health boosters isn't going to offer significantly greater benefits than just 1 or 2 would, but may be made up for in the amount of carting that's prevented. Secondly, we have the defensive mantles: Vitality, Temporal, Evasion, Rocksteady, Immunity, and the 5 elemental mantles. The latter few serve as
Wire
situational
bugs are
defensive
so
options,
fucking nice. I
excellent
agree.
against very specific monsters, like resisting Lunastra's Supernova or Kulvitaroth's Breath with the Fireproof Mantle, but that specificity is at the cost of more general use gear. And while you can change equipment mid-quest, it's not an efficient use of time. The 4 more
Oh yeah,
general
Lunastro is out because Lunastro was pretty tough. Probably one of the tougher monsters in base world. And oh, another thing about the wire bugs that I think is fun is because my friend discovered this and I saw a couple of people using it online. There's probably by now there's probably some people who know enough people who know about it. But if you get Evade Extender 3, you can like basically wire bug and roll midair, and you can get a lot of distance to the fact that you can like have close to the mobility of
mantles are a bit interesting to discuss, as they are all rather strong, but offer different strengths to different types of players. The temporal mantle offers near immunity for a time, but at the cost of a higher recharge rate and interrupting combos, like for the longsword final slash or hunting horn recitals. And it's unnecessary for higher skilled players who wouldn't be getting hit so much in the first place, and would be better served with more offensive options like the evasion mantle or affinity booster. The Rocksteady mantle reduces damage taken along with negating knockback and getting stunned by roars or quakes, but it's also a silent killer. Character knockback is a major damage indicator and offers a huge amount of invincibility frames, so while the Rocksteady mantle does reduce damage taken, against monsters who love their combos like Nergigante, it can be just as much of a detriment if not handled correctly. The evasion mantle gives more invincibility frames with your roll, and an attack boost for a successful dodge, but while the window is wider, it's still a higher risk than the virtual guarantee of the other three mantles, with higher gains in exchange for stricter requirements. The Vitality Mantle is the earliest option, but it's actually the weakest in the long term, as late game it will only resist a hit or two at best. But while not losing health when getting hit will always be of benefit to skills like peak performance, it doesn't offer the benefits of the other three. All of them offer different strokes for different folks, benefiting stronger players, but not without risks for improper use. And what I think justifies the existence of mantles is the last grouping of tools, the specialty mantles, such as the Glider, Impact, or Bandit Mantle. While they offer unique abilities, those abilities are specific, and work strongest in conjunction with equally specific armor or weapon setups over the general use, defensive, and support options. Due to their
I guess I will say why I like the gear. I guess I don't. It's not one of the mechanics I miss most from World. I guess I don't mind them not being in Rise, basically, even though I think they're cool.
Situational uses, they can serve as jumping off points for fun specific armor sets. Tools are another layer of mechanics, and their versatility allows for further player expression and customizability.
See, I didn't bring it up, but that mentioning the idea of having specific armor sets, because one of them increases your bash damage or like knockout damage, and I remember just someone having a set where they talked about like using dual swords with that the impact mantle. So that way, because dual swords is great at inflicting status, so if you combine that with the impact mantle, you just stun monsters really easily by just smacking them in the head. And I remember that being a cool idea, so I sort of brought that up, but not directly, but yeah.
Making them just as loaded with meaningful choice as armor or weapons. There will be ones more optimal for certain players or situations, but the series has so many that player knowledge will be tested time and time again. And on the note of player knowledge, we switch gears to perhaps the largest expansion of mechanics in Monster Hunter World, the environmental system. From health-restoring Vital Lilies and Vigor Flies to the ailment-inducing toads, poison cups, or flash flies, these environmental traps and buffs aren't completely new, but are rather more generally applicable expansions on the previous, more context-sensitive environmental interactions of monsters like Diablos, Tigrex, or Elatrion getting stuck on the wall from charging. These new and more varied elements, however, have their trade-offs in use and complexity. Diablos getting his horns stuck naturally came to an end the moment his horns finally broke off, while using, say, the trees in the ancient forest or falling boulders are often one-time use, though there will be multiple available depending on the map. Alongside status effects like paralysis,
yeah, see, they definitely make the maps have a difficulty in themselves, because I just remember some maps or some areas of maps they don't in the the volcano area, I forget what it was called, because it has the one area in the middle with the crystals that you drop down and they do a shitload of damage, because I remember those being really important in the behemoth fight. But the last area, I'm pretty sure, doesn't have anything major that does a lot of major damage in there, except for just the walls and stuff. Right, and I think I even bring up how the ancient forest has more Vital Lilies and Vigor Flies than some of the other areas, so it's definitely the forest is the easy area, and then there's less of that stuff into the other areas, but yeah.
Shock traps, they achieve roughly the same effect in leaving the monster vulnerable to player attack. Traps require inventory space, while statuses need certain weapons or uncommon gear like throwing knives. But environmental traps, as they are locked into place rather than being free to go wherever, are less tied to player agency, instead requiring
I confused myself because I'm talking in the video and it's wait, they're trapped where they belong, and I'm wait, hold on, and then no, in Rise you can pick up paratoads and move them, yeah.
Stricter timing and environmental awareness, which gives the maps more variety in how they are interacted with. If you're low on Screamer Pods, you can just hit one of the Noyos with your Slinger to get a similar effect. But the best environmental traps don't just reward situational awareness, but punish the lack thereof. It happens. So with that in mind, the healing offered by Vigorflies and Vital Lilies certainly seems like a low risk with high reward. You'll maybe need a bit of time to find one, but the reward of healing mid-combat might be worth it, while failure only expends the healing unnecessarily,
There's also...
as monsters don't restore health from them as the player does. But where it's deceptive is in that when you will most need to seek out...
Nope, okay, see, yeah, I don't bring up, because I mentioned soft punishment of time being taken away, especially when, like, you have a time limit in the quest, and it's like, yeah, if you run away to heal, you're taking more time, right? So, weird that I didn't mention that. Oh well.
A Vigorfly is when you're at low health. If you happen to end up by one when needed,
Oh, that's
you'll
my
be in
friend.
luck. But that's statistically
Gosh darn, that's my real life friend who I played with. Huh, I didn't realize I took some footage of us playing.
unlikely. The Ancient Forest has 4 zones with environmental healing, but the other 4 maps have only 1 each.
Because I know another thing
And in zones
a
the
cameo
monster
I'll
is
point
likely
out,
to sleep
if
in,
I
there are
see it.
never any to be found.
Oh, I'll just say it, because so basically originally, because I was planning this video, or had the idea for this video when Monster Hunter World came out. And in a lot of Monster Hunter games, you can get a bunch of different cats because you can like change their stats and like what they can do with their skills and stuff. So they give you a bunch of cats so you can have different builds, basically. My idea that I was going to get a bunch of different cats and name them after my patrons and use that for a patron role, but that didn't happen because you only get one cat in the world. Because again, like I guess, did I even talk about that as far as like simplifying game mechanics? Because they just straight up remove a big chunk of that aspect of. They brought it back for Rise too, but they don't have it in World, and so basically, sometimes I think because someone even thought like, oh, you were playing with Mathwiz in the video, and it's like, no, I named my first cat Mathwiz because she'd been my patron for so long and she was a friend of mine. Yeah, so and that's still the case. If I booted up Iceborne right now, like my cat's still named Mathwiz, so because I just didn't change it. But it turned out that that's not how cats work in the game, so I had to do a normal patron role for this video instead of having the my cats, because that would have been really cool if I'd done that, but the game didn't work like that.
Meaning the last part of the hunt will be the most testing. But the risk in using them doesn't come from availability, but rather it's an opting to use one over another choice. A potion or healing fountain is a guaranteed way to heal in total player control, but consumes resources, while Vigorflies and Vital Lilies don't consume player resources,
I haven't thought of it in a while.
but they aren't as reliable or convenient. Every step you take towards a Vigorfly without taking a potion is another step that a monster can ruin your day. And again, it's player skill that will result in the best judge of circumstances between using a potion or relying on the environment, allowing for more emergent gameplay and happenings. And those deeper interactive ties with the environment give each map its distinctive feel, risks, and bounties purely through game mechanics. Beyond aesthetics and monster choice, the Ancient Forest is more welcoming through its healing Vigorflies and Vital Lilies than the Rotten Vale is with its effluvial haze and pools of acid. And on the note of environment, one of the strongest consolidations World has made in regards to previous mechanics is the simple and elegant Slinger. Combining items from previous installments like throwing knives, stones, and flash bombs, it elegantly acts as a balancing factor while making the items more widely usable. In previous games,
I mean, I'm not like, because I remember, I mean, Donkey's videos are funny, but like when you've played the game, it's very clear, very, very fucking clear when he's deliberately playing bad on purpose. I think one of the games that was most notable for me was the Splunky 2 video. And so I just thought about that because he like put the monster to sleep, or I put the monster to sleep, and then I just hit it on the wing when normally you want to go for a weaker point, but with more higher damage stuff. So like I was very just clear showing off that I could put monsters to sleep, but then I attacked it. So I don't know, just a weird, because that's the other thing with this video is a lot of this footage I had to record it to the script, to show what I was talking about. Like it's very clear, but it's interesting because I don't do that many gameplay videos. Actually, this might be because I did the Iceborne video, but I don't think there was an instance in that video where I specifically recorded something. I mean, I recorded the whole playthrough for that video, but there wasn't like I can't think of a scene in there that I recorded like acted a certain way to to show off something. because I was mostly just talking about the game generally. So I was just thinking about how it's like I haven't really done that. And because when I did my Dark Souls video, that would have been another video that I would have done that, but I outsourced the editing of that to someone else who just I wanted them to actually play the game and use their footage because I asked them beforehand if but they just ended up using footage off of YouTube, and I had to badger them into telling me who to credit because it was a mess. But I just hadn't thought. I just was thinking about how I like really hadn't done that, and or this is like the only video I've really done that, even though that's probably pretty normal for video game YouTubers. But I'm just not that much of a video game YouTuber, so yeah.
Items could be thrown easily as long as you are ready, but in tying it to the slinger, it takes a bit more time to switch back and forth between options, as you can only hold one type of item in the slinger at one time. A hunter's slinger will have a lot of use, between flash pods, knives, pods dropped by monsters that often guarantee flinches, or those with more specific effects, like Water Moss, which can get mud off of Gyrototis or Baroth, or even douse Anjanath's flame before he gets a chance to use it. Rather than
definitely
merely having the item in
underutilized
your
some of
inventory
those.
and knowing when to use it, the player needs to balance environmental knowledge and monster needs to ensure they have the best slinger loadout at any given time, adding a whole new layer of meaningful decisions that expand on what was, in previous games, using the right item at the right time rather than needing to think too far ahead beyond inventory.
I definitely think I prefer the slinger to like because having just certain random fucking items that do like one thing. I guess I mean that's still part of the case. Like having flash pods and dung pods, like you still have to bring those. Like they're just, if anything, they're kind of like a nerf on the original item in a sense, but tying it to the slinger. But I don't know. I just slinger's cool, and I like having the environmental stuff because I just like, oh, there's the right pod I need or whatever. I don't know.
Now, moving on to another change that's very rested in the maps, but certainly may interfere with forethought and thinking, you have the light in the eye of the hunter, scout flies. All too helpful for picking out items and objects in the environment, they also serve as a guide to fighting monsters, though not immediately. From the start of the game, the player has to collect tracks themselves to get the scout flies to help, but after the hunter and scout flies become more experienced, they become more able to hone in on the monster from the start of the quest. In a way, this is automatically doing what the player might slowly pick up on in older games through memorizing monster patterns, but that's not completely gone either. The scout flies are automated and thus lacking in foresight. Your scout flies will try to walk you there, and the unfamiliar player might be tempted to follow them, as when the monster runs off they usually don't go too far. But when fighting Kushala on the ground in Zone 1, if he gets away then it'll be a much longer trip to the top of the forest by foot than it would be to fast travel by Wingdrake. So while the scout flies nudge the player towards their choices, the player isn't
obviously
totally
recorded
beholden
by
to them, though such circumstances are rare. Paintballs, however, have an interesting
Or
quirk
added
in
line
comparison
later.
through their lack of permanence.
No,
They
that
only
one
last
was
for about
definitely something I thought about later and just added, but it's just so jarring. I'm trying to be better about that. But I also just can't fucking talk. That's why I script, because I can't string my points together without a script, and even the scripts I can barely deliver on. So, oops, I became a YouTuber for some reason.
5 minutes before they need to be reapplied, and it's not unknown for one to wear off right as the monster decides to fly away. Players familiar with the maps and patterns will be able to predict where it goes through foreknowledge or smart use of the lock-on in later games. But when taken in regards to choice, the player really has none. They can either use the paintball and occasionally reapply when it wears off, or if they think it's about to, or they can opt not to and go off of instinct and game knowledge. As it's entirely possible to go without it at no real cost to the player, and as their use only avoids soft punishment.
That's just kind of like, because just talk about, like, yeah, it's hard and soft punishments is one way to think about game design, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's the paintballs, but there's a bit more to that, because, like, just the feeling of actually tracking the monster, right, even if it's just, like, you put in a paintball on it, like, I feel like it's a little different in a world where, again, it is very automated, so, like, there's something to be said about just the feeling of doing it, whether if you think it's tedious or if you think it adds to the experience. Because, like, I've been on hunts with friends where we lose the monster and we have to split up to fucking find it. And, I see it, it's flying away. Before I could paintball it, that was a very real thing that happened, so,
of time taken to find the monster, it's used as more of a learning device to become familiar with the monster's movement patterns. Using a paintball is less about giving the player an advantage than it is about how much the player is willing or able to learn. and failure to use them properly will result in lost time should the hunter faint or the monster escape unpainted. But in comparison, Scoutflies offer less options as they cannot be turned off, and to avoid them entirely is a hapless struggle against fate. That results in a lack of productivity out of spite. But that said,
I'm
due to
just
the added
imagining a weird ass
complexity of
situation
maps
there.
and the lack of divided zones, Scoutflies are something of a necessity. The maps are too large and intricate to be displayed on the larger screen of console games,
Forgot about
requiring the
that,
zoomed-in
actually.
view to be of any use. And paintballs are
Especially
only
the ancient
because
forests where it's very layered and mazy. Like I've gotten lost there because it's a lot. So yeah.
the whole map is available to the view of the player. But to shrink the maps back down would reduce the sense of scale and ultimately dial back some of the progress that World has made. To use the paintball system in World
and
would
see, I
result
don't
in
know.
endless frustration.
Framing it as progress is weird to me because, like, again, part of my argument is that like both, or at least part of my feelings now is that both old and new are good in different ways, right? Like I feel like thinking about things in terms of like progress and regression is just like a little dismissive because people can enjoy things like or that aspect like what's good game design necessarily versus like because obviously there can be choices made that are deliberately bad but make for an evocative or a certain type of feeling, right? um like a game being more difficult, like Helldivers. The way it like for you don't there's no automatic reload when you run out of ammo. You have to manually reload your gun. Right? I'm pretty new to the game, so I'm just playing it. It's like, oh, I'm just shooting, and it's like, oh, I ran out of ammo. Like I'm not paying enough attention to my ammos, right? Like it feels worse. And never mind, if you reload, you also lose the ammo that was in that magazine. Unlike a lot of other games where it just refills your ammo to maximum, right? So like they achieve different things, and some of them are like better for the players, but in being less good for the players, like it demands you pay more attention, right? Um, and yeah, no, exactly. Like what is good game design is too much of a question. Yeah, so I don't like the idea of just like distilling it just to because I think, yeah, I mean, World is my favorite Monster Hunter game. That is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean the other ones are less valuable because they're regressed or whatever. They're more that regress is never mind. That's the wrong word to use, but they're not as progressed, right? So I just don't like the way like there's just an automatic assumption there that the new maps are better, right? And there's things I like a lot about the maps in World. Like I remember going to Rise, and it's just like everything's way more flat overall. Like there are like mountains and stuff like and walls, but generally speaking, like you don't have the verticality that you have in World, where World has this big tree and then everything's like around it. Like that's really cool, right? So do I say that Rise's maps have regressed because they're more like the old games? But even that, because World's thing there's limits too, because like they couldn't do Lagia Cruise because he's too long. He doesn't work with all the slopes and stuff. So that's what I don't know if that was confirmed, but I remember that being a point of discussion. And in They didn't have Lagia Cruise, but they did have Almudron, who had the same like skeleton as Lagia Cruise and Rise, and Rise was more flat, so that was more like possible. So yeah, it's just like I don't like just saying one or the other is better because because like something, yeah, I don't know, it's a whole thing.
Of having to open the map again and again, or being unable to see one's relative place on the zoomed out map taking up such a huge amount of screen space. Paintballs would also inevitably be slinger pods, meaning that in order to be properly balanced, they'd need the extra time to reach and used, giving the monster extra time to run, though this would be offset by the ability to properly aim and catch them as they were going up or running off. And considering the very welcome change of zones to a single, interconnected map, the lack of meaningful choice offered by Scoutflies compared to the learning mechanism of paintballs might ultimately be necessary. Zones were established out of technical limitations at the time, and even today have reason to persist in handheld installments. And while there are yet to be any handheld games developed after World...
Yeah, I had to specify that because there were some reviews that came out that were talking about how Generations Ultimate was a step backwards for Monster Hunter, and it's like... Or maybe that was it. I don't know if that had actually happened by the time I played this game, though. Or no, well... No, because Generations did come out, but I don't remember the exact release order between World Generations and Generations Ultimate, because in Japan... Oh, no, because actually... No, yeah, no... Yeah, I don't remember. Um,
For the foreseeable future,
I
it
forgot
would
what I
be
was
the
talking
only
about.
feasible way to continue Monster Hunter on handheld consoles
Oh yeah,
until
no, that's what I was
technology.
gonna say. Because Rise doesn't have. I mean, well, Switch is like arguably a handheld console. Because like yeah, 4 and Generations Ultimate still had zones, but Rise didn't have zones. But Generations Ultimate was a sequel to a 3DS game, so even though it was a Switch game, it was still a 3DS game in a few ways as well. Whereas Rise was still exclusively made for Switch originally, because I'm pretty sure they moved it on to other consoles later. So, but it still doesn't have zones anymore. Even though the map is honestly like, if you look at the map, it's closer to this kind of map where it's just like there are like area, but that's also true of World. Like it has its own pathways. So never mind.
Proves. But that doesn't
Never mind.
negate them being frustrating between monsters dying out of zone or flailing into areas the player can't reach, but they can. The best advantage of zones
Yeah.
is that by allowing the hunter to skip over large areas of the map, the area could maintain a sense of scale, like climbing the snowy mountains. But World achieves a similar effect without loading screen teleportations. Both systems, paintballs and scoutflies, work perfectly for their respective map systems, though that doesn't mean some changes wouldn't be acceptable. Scoutflies need to be readable, but they don't have to be so visually intrusive. Now,
I guess to add to this conversation, because I was thinking about Rise. Hello, complex motives. I was gonna say, because I was just thinking about Rise in contrast to this, where like, because Rise doesn't have paintballs or glowflies. Instead, you just intuitively know where the monsters are on the map. And how I read that in the original game is because I just considered it like your character is from this region, and so in knowing the region, they're just able to tell where the monster is. But that doesn't work when they go to other places. So I don't know. I think it's fine. It's definitely like I'm trying to think because I don't mind. I'm trying to think if I missed it or not because it was easy, but it's just so like nothing in exchange. Because there's no finding the monster. You see it on your map. It's a question mark, and maybe it's like one of 3 question marks, and you don't know which one's your question mark. But that stops being a thing once you actually like meet all the monsters, and or even even when you fight a new monster, it's like okay, there's 2 monsters I recognize and a question mark. I wonder which one's the one I need to find, right? Like it's you know um so yeah, it's just kind of it is what it is. So like they just kind of remove that aspect from. I mean, and they do what they do instead though is because they have the Spira bugs where instead of going around exploring the map trying to find the monster, instead you're going around exploring the map getting Spira bugs to raise your stats. That is a system I would not mind being lost in wilds or not doing that again because it is fun with the wire bugs and stuff, but it's also like after a point it's just like you just want to fight the monster and going around the map catching all the bugs and knowing it's just a little annoying because you feel like you have to do it because you need that extra health and damage just to make the hunt go faster, but the time taking, I think someone even did the math and it's like the time you save by getting like max attack spear bugs is probably not worth it because you should just be killing the monster basically. I don't know if that's true, but I just remember that being a thing, and it just as like I like video games, I like seeing number go up, right? So that and just like being at my best possible like position, and hitting the monster's weak point and getting all the spirit bugs feeds into that. So yeah.
off on that note of readability, there's one last interesting bit of game design I'd like to cover here: armor skills.
Oh
The
right.
intricacies of armor skills have always been a bit obtuse when it comes to new players. Raise your hand if you've ever seen a newbie with 5 pieces of armor from 5 different sets, no active skills, and somehow has negative 13 fire defense and you're up against a high ranked Tails.
That was a real story that happened to me in 4 Ultimate, because I was playing online and a guy just joined and he seemed really nice, but I was like, dude, you have no armor skills and my minus 13 fire defense, and we're fighting Teostra. I had to kick him out, but because it's like I hate typing on 3DS. Ideally I'd like to explain to him and help him be a better player, but like I didn't have that time or energy. And he was literally going to impact the quest negatively if we fought with him on it, because it's like maybe he would have been perfectly fine with Teostra, but going into Teostra with the weakness to fire and no armor skills in higher G rank, I forget which one it was just definitely like bruh. So yeah, just a little. I don't know. Does that count as elitism? I guess because I wasn't like I don't want to. I don't think I was being like I'm superior to you, but I was just like I don't want to hunt with you because maybe more gatekeeping if anything. But it's like him losing would have kept him anyway, and I just didn't want to suffer for that loss. So anyway,
Strap. While the old system was rather easy to understand once you knew how activation threshold of points worked, there was a vast amount of potential possible with the slight number differences. Two identical sets of skills could be achieved with completely different sets of armor, and
that's
common
still
sets
true.
would garner some level of fame for their effectiveness, like Sianatar SUUSS, which
Okay.
offered the absolutely vital sharpness +1 early into Free to Me Knight's high rank, or Buja Buja Boo, which gave attack up large and low rank of generations from some of the easiest monsters you could fight. World doesn't offer the same level of specificity though. As the point system has been dropped for flat levels, every piece offers something. Without the nuance of variable skill point numbers
This
or
is
the
like,
threat of
I don't know.
negative skills,
Because I think, yeah, I like this new system better because it's easier. Instead of like, because instead of just having to fucking do math with really just dumb numbers and just like, oh, you're off by a point. Guess and I just use fucking armor set builders anyway in either case. But at least in with the world rise system, it's easier for me to just like adapt my set. Where in the old system, if you change like one decoration or skill, you might as well just throw the whole set out and start again because it's it's probably not gonna work. Okay, yeah, thank you, Traverse. Because yeah, I haven't actually played a lot of MMOs. I've played a little RuneScape, but I played it so yeah, just like group competency. Yeah, that makes sense.
while every combination is on some level valid, every combination is also, well, valid. A meaningful choice is given that meaning by outcome, so if there's no negative outcome, like the failure to activate a skill properly, or even outright negative skills, then the impact of the choice is lessened. It's undeniably a simplified system, in a way that makes it easier to get good skills without any kind of trade-off to hold it back, beyond lack of efficiency, as randomized decorations are only replacing randomized charms. The system change itself is understandable.
But
To get a
wait,
highly effective armor,
did we not have charms at that point in World? Because no, I get. I don't even fucking remember how charms work in World because it's been so long since I played it. And they change systems all the time. But yeah, it's been a while.
set required either a large amount of work or research outside the game, often through third-party software, tools, or other assistance.
And this
Compare
might
this
just
to
be
other-
the problem with this is it might just be talking about how I play the game and maybe being less like inquisitive regarding how others play the game. Like this is definitely the iffiest part of the video, and I remember getting at least one comment about it.
common
So,
outside health of past games, weapon trees and monster damage and reward charts, which were both diegetically incorporated into World, cutting out the middleman and leveling the playing field between those who don't utilize the outside help and those who do. In theory, the changes to armor sets accomplish the same thing in leveling the playing field, as an effective armor set can be found that much easier, but it's at the cost of complexity in service to appealing to newer fans at the expense of one of the game's
which is yes, that is casualized by the original definition, but I don't necessarily think that takes away. Does it take away choices? I don't know. It just kind of like it lowers the barrier of entry, but it's still like I don't know, because like you still have like someone who gets a very efficient set through tools and knows like what armor versus someone who just like is playing the game and picked this armor set that gives them these skills and maybe modded it a little bit because they like these other skills better, right? Like I don't know, like one is still going to be stronger, quote unquote, like or especially when you get like because this was before what was that one was Safi Jiva, who had a whole ass thing with the armor set and modifying it, and there's some like randomization. That's also true of the deviant monster. No, what are they called? I've not played. Oh my god, I'm so out of loop with Monster Hunter Rise. My brain just doesn't work. But the monsters, the afflicted monsters in Rise, where because there's also randomization there. But I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about here. This is probably this is a weaker part of the video, I think, for sure.
most unique features. Incorporating the armor set finder into the actual game obviously wouldn't work, as the game would be making the choices for you, whereas monster information and weapon trees only nudge the player in the right direction. A compromise might be to restore the old system, but tutorialize it better so that it's less oppressive to new players. And while an armor set finder might be a bit much, an armor set builder would go along the visual preview that was added in World and could reduce some of the clunky legwork in trying to make a set.
Oh yeah,
allowing
someone
players
pointed out
to
that
build-
that's already in the game. Like you could already see how like hypothetical sets look. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember for sure, but it makes sense. So,
build a potential
yeah.
set without making the pieces outright until they choose to. Without the automation of third-party devices, it would mean more time spent in menus, but that time would be spent making actual choices, picking armor to avoid negative or inactive skills, with the end result being a blueprint to go out and hunt for.
Yeah, if that's
The
true, and you
third-party
could just
software
like
would remain as a
make
faster
mock-up
option
sets.
for
Maybe
those in the know.
you might have not been able to do it with gems though, which is pretty fucking important for deciding an armor set. So yeah.
But those without it won't be
But I
helpless
don't know.
either.
I don't remember
Because
it well enough.
streamlining the data gathering and skill alignment process doesn't need to mean the mechanics are simplified too, but that's the system World has offered, and that's the system it might have for the rest of the franchise. Monster Hunter has undeniably changed, but while I argue for the strengths of many of those changes, there's been some undeniable simplification at work. But while simplification is not something that should be accepted without scrutiny, all too often have longtime fans thrown out the baby with the bathwater and dismissing any addition or change with potential negative ramifications. New mechanics don't have to come in at the expense of old ones. Scrutiny is fine, but a video game is a series of choices. If there are a variety of interesting choices for a variety of interesting situations, then it's a good system. World has room for improvement, but no Monster Hunter game has been perfect. And even with the changes, many of which have offered more rather than less, the core gameplay is still very much there, even if this is the first entry in a major shift from the 15-year-old norm. And with Generations Ultimate coming out, it's not impossible that the traditional style will remain, if only on handhelds for the time being.
Yep.
Even if it ultimately doesn't last, World's success will hopefully mean further iterations expand on the means and movements of man and monster alike. I didn't talk about everything, as there's a lot to dissect, but I hit some of the most commonly disparaged gameplay changes, and hopefully noted a standard that might help you to judge the changes between installments on your own. If there's anything I missed or was wrong on, an addendum might be in order. In the meantime, I don't usually discuss video games, but consider supporting me with Ko-fi or through Patreon, along with Mathwiz,
the voice again.
Volkyan, Mohammed Hakim, Tengun, Luis Segura.
Yeah, okay, I guess that about does it. Yeah, I definitely, because like, yeah, I was responding to the idea of casualized being used as a negative term, and I don't think the way I guess the way I defined it, that's the thing. I guess that's an issue I have with the video is that like, I ultimately define like I'm responding about to talking about the idea of casualization, but I'm ultimately accepting that it is a negative because I'm just giving a better reason for it by it reduces meaningful gameplay choices, right? And then I don't think like I don't know I ultimately am pretty fine with all the changes in world. Like I or not maybe not because I just think like I think I don't know another example I just thought of is I remember watching a TED talk of one of the staff behind the Knights of Sidonia anime, which was like a CG production, and his argument for CG in anime was that he felt that like being able to do the less interesting parts, like say a crowd scene of a bunch of students, gave the staff more time to focus on the more interesting parts. So applying that to Monster Hunter is like by spending less time, say like standing around drinking a potion, right? Like by adding movement into the equation, it makes the gameplay more dynamic, right? Because you're not just you're instead of just like, oh, I gotta find a place to take a sip of my drink. Instead, you're moving. You're still being careful, watchful of the monster's attacks and dodging, but you're positioning yourself to jump into action once the potion is, so it makes the gameplay more dynamic, right? So I there's a lot. I definitely could have done way better in talking about the gameplay and how it works with how the changes work for actually playing the game. But I wasn't really smart enough to do so. I don't think it's a bad video, but it could be so much better. It could be better, but I also would never make another video like this. I don't think, unless I really really had something interesting to say. But yeah. All right, one more. Okay, maybe this is gonna be a 3-hour stream after. Well, maybe it is. This next video is a fucking doozy. Ooh, just bumped into my water bottle. Everything's fine. All right, y'all ready for this? Cause I need to use the bathroom real quick. Give me 1 second, everybody. Okay, I am back. Does someone needed? Oh, let me close my door. Actually, didn't need to do that, but it distracts me. So, or it would distract me. Sorry, something got caught in my wheels, of my chair. All right. This video is not quite as long, but I mean, this is okay. That was because I'm so glad that I numbered my video because I have a big folder with all my videos and I numbered them so I can like because that one was like I think it was number 46. This one is number 67. So and I think there was a pretty big change in my content. No, this is the Love Lab video, which again there was a trending Twitter thing about the blackface scene and people thinking it was or talking about how it was problematic or whatever. And I had recently watched Love Lab, maybe it's not that maybe it was the opposite, and I actually decided to watch Love Lab, rewatch Love Lab because of that, and I suggested for the Weeb Club, and we talked about it, and had a fun discussion because it's such a good show. I love Love Lab, and I really want to read the manga when it's fully translated and get the full story, but it's just Soga Kobo. It's a really good show. Um, and so yeah, but I have one major fucking issue with this video that I thinking back, I'm just like, but uh, overall I expect it to be fine, but we will see, I suppose.
The what is stupid, but unlike him, the stupid in Love Lab is good. I like.
Oh my god!
Rito's-
This. Oh my god! Okay. This scene.
Oh no.
This scene. This is problematic. This show's a little problematic. You know. I can't believe this show's racist.
Oh god, there it is. Did I have someone else edit this video? Hold on, I'm gonna check real quick. Yeah, it's been a while because like I don't know. Okay, hold on. I just want to look up this video real quick because I want to see who edited it. No, wrong one. Because that does not seem like an edit I would do. I don't know that I would use Wii Shop Music or time things. It was edited by What the What. Okay. That tracks. That tracks. So okay, I just wanted to double check for myself because it's you know and yeah, there's a Weeb Club advert. So yep. All right.
So, not too long ago, you might have seen this tweet flying around with an out-of-context clip from the 2013 Doga Koba show, Love Lab. And there are definitely a few issues at hand here, but before I begin properly, I will mention that over the course of this video, I'm going to be bringing up a few things. I will be spoiling Love Lab for context, and regardless of what is literally one joke, I do recommend the show a lot if cute and funny is your thing, because it's great for both. I'm also going to refer to some subjects and ideas raised in other videos, the ones I'll be referring to directly being Under the Scope's recent Monogatari and Problematic Media video, the Hidamari sketch and Moe video, Zaria's Sister Krona video, and a handful from Lindsay Ellis including Woke Disney and Mel Brooks. I'll also have several sources, articles, and papers, plus a prior video I'll be referring back to.
Research!
Everything
Yay!
being linked in the description. Now, to break down the tweet, honestly I'm not even sure if they watched the show or not. By the end of episode 1, anyone would know that despite having an ideal premise for cute lesbians, it's anything but. By episode 8, where the infamous scene takes place, the show had already gotten out of the way that one of the 5 main characters of the student council already had a boyfriend and introduced 2 other romantic partners that the show, and more explicitly, manga, would use to go into its romance. Potentials of the premise aside, the fact that it is a hetero
God,
show as
I
opposed to
literally like I'm thinking like, man, it would be really cool to rewatch Love Lab. Like I saw it a few years ago. I don't need to rewatch it, but it's just like it's a good show. It's so fun. I love it. Love Lab. Love Lab. Yeah, see, I have I never watched that many Zaria videos, and I guess to briefly talk about the crunch, because like one aspect of this video that was missing was because I was going to include a big write up regarding Sister Crone and what, because she's like one of my favorite characters in Promised Neverland, and I remember having a point about how that she didn't bring up okay, Zarya's not a she anymore. Excuse me. That Zarya he didn't bring up in his video. It's sorry weird to say that because like I'm like never I don't bring up Zarya that much. And I only saw a few of their videos, his videos, but it's like okay, let me just calm the fuck down. But basically, because I was gonna basically bring my own analysis of Crone, and one of my points was like I thought it because how I read it is that like because she I remember with actual slaves with house slaves would tend to be more like they pick the lighter skinned ones to be house slaves and the darker skinned ones worked outside. So I just remember thinking it's like Isabella is lighter skinned and Crone's darker skinned, and Isabella's favored by the system and Crone's not, right? Like the system was rigged against her from the very fucking start. And I just remember that not being a point that she brought up in her video, and I was gonna make talk about that and a bit more things. In general, I still like because I remember I got a comment about this video saying that like I shouldn't like they I guess maybe they didn't dislike the video, but they felt weird about it, or they just straight up didn't like the fact that I'm talking about blackface and racism as a white person. And especially the way I kind of like talk about Zarya's video. Zarya's black, and I'm kind of like the one because like I talked about this with Mathwiz as well. I think I don't know if it was public or I think it was when we were streaming Danganronpa, because because as a cis white guy, like I don't want to overwrite the voices of like minority creators, but I also don't want to avoid talking about them at all because I do think the people in the majority or plurality, right? Like cis people are the majority. White people in America are the plurality. They're the biggest. They're not over half, I'm pretty sure. Maybe they are. I don't remember. It's been a while since I checked the demographic, but there's more white people than any other single demographic in America, right? So I want to understand these things. I want to be able to talk about them because if we just say I can't talk about them, then that like especially if you tell other people like I don't know like it's that striking that balance, right, of like we need to be able to talk about these things, but also we don't want to overwrite the voices of the people who are going to be like looked at more negatively or more because they're not like so that was not how I intended this video to come off on. I don't know that it does, but I don't like the idea that it might. Even just just thinking about it. Yeah, Gabriel. I'm pretty sure because Zarya was trans when he was doing his channel, but apparently since then and stopping YouTube, he's detransitioned. So Pedantic is still trans and they're still together. But I just remember hearing about that, so it's I just correcting myself. I'm pretty sure that's correct. I've never see that's the thing. Nothing against Zarya at all. I really wish I gave Zarya more credit because I think that Zarya was coming from a good place. I just like didn't really gel with the videos of his that I watched, and there was a bunch. There was a bunch more that I didn't watch, and I just remember like I just never. I don't know. It's just a shame that like this is the only video I have bring up. And this was one of the only ones that I watched of his, and it's I had problems with it, right? So and even then the problems that like I did have, I didn't go because I didn't include that Crone discussion that I was going to. So this video was written with in mind of like I was going to go more into this specific topic, but because I ended up don't so I don't know what I say about the video, but I'm definitely like really apprehensive about how I did bring it up. One mistake I did is because Zarya did include sources in the comments. I was like I only looked at the description because I don't usually look at comments. So I mentioned like you didn't cite any sources. Zarya did cite sources. Oops. So that's a very, very fucking embarrassing mistake. So that's my biggest issue with this video. I don't know if I have more issues with the video. But it's still a really fucking big issue because again, I don't want to say that I shouldn't talk about these things, but like especially like I definitely should have been more careful about them potentially being at Zarya's expense as so anyway, No, yeah, Traverser, because like I remember talking about that with I think the Manji, because he's black, but like I don't because I obviously if like someone had a problem with me saying these things were if they were white, like I think I had the idea of a joke of just like, hey, Nun, you're black, can you? And Nun said, yeah, yeah. I say I'm just gonna repeat all these points, just that, like something dumb to because that's kind of racist to think that, but like I'm more worried, like most worried about that, even though I did get those comments because again I want to have the ability to talk about like trans things or racial things because I do have like I don't want to like I want to be careful about it, but again it's more the like like the way I'm talking about Zarya's stuff that I don't know I'll have to watch it but to see more because yeah obviously like just having the idea of having it that my friend described me a scene in Better Off Ted. I had not watched the show, but it's just like there's an episode that hailed as like systemic racism that sounds really fucking funny because they have like doors that only open if they recognize the employee, but like it's bad at recognizing the black employees, so they just hire a bunch of white guys to be with the black employees to open the doors for them basically. But then their hiring metrics look bad because they're hiring way more white people than black people, so then they hire more black people to offset the metrics, and they just so every black guy has a white guy and every black guy who has a white guy has another black guy. It's just so fucking stupid, and I just had like the idea of like a white guy having a black guy or a black guy having a white guy there is just like it's so dumb like to me. It's just like the idea of like yeah I can't talk about these things because I'm white, so I'll just grab my black guy. And it's like what is that, what do you do, like no don't that's why that's one of the reasons why it's dumb to like say that. But um yeah there's yeah, no, and especially like Moreau and Traverse talk about even more like layers to it, just like yeah, tokenization and yeah, I appreciate because like or I guess what you're saying is that you have this video of mine on a playlist of yours, and because or I didn't find any malice or okay, I don't know, and then Moreau's talking about yeah, people cherry picking regarding demographics because yeah, there's even like positive racism. Like I remember Joe talking about some like Asian racism and how like a lot of the progress that was made just kind of went away with COVID. Because and like because that was in response to people with like I think last June of just gay pride and stuff. It's like oh we've already made such progress, why do you have to keep bringing it up? And it's like well because that can all go away overnight, right? So I don't know. Just anyway, I'm just gonna watch the video more. Um,
Necessary thematically. The desire of the girls to love is at odds with the rules of their prestigious all-girls academy, which means that in order to have the boyfriends they want, they must challenge the authority in place so that they may do so freely. Homosexuality has not been directly commented on, at least not up to the manga material I've read, but it isn't explicitly against the rules either. And it's not uncommon to see nameless students making heart eyes at the main characters they idealize. Lesbian relationships would not be an opposition of authority, but a sidestep around it, leaning into something already present to avoid challenging the systems in place and dodge around meaningful conflict or change
Okay,
to the traditional norms of the school.
that's weird. Okay, because it's like I remember there was a Moon Channel did a video about like trans characters in games, and they were talking about how, or he was talking about how, from what he understands, at least like legally speaking, um, there's more, there's like less societal stigma against, or not societal stigma. There's less like systemic stigma against being trans than there is being gay because of course Japan has a birth rate crisis and they want people to breed, um, and I guess he just brought up an interesting point about how at least from his outside perspective, I'm caveating with that because I don't know if it's absolutely correct or not, and he is careful to mention that he doesn't mean that trans people don't go through their own issues in Japan or their own stigmas. He was speaking of it strictly from a legal lens, but he just brought up the idea that like transness is more conforming possibly than same-sex relationships because again when and he was talking about how that sort of factored into some of the characters he talked about, so I don't know how if that really ties to Love Lab, but I just the idea of like hetero versus homosexual romance where it's like well if homosexual romances isn't like breaking the rules, but heterosexual romance is, then yeah, like heterosexual is where they're fighting. I don't know, just adding it to other ideas basically. But oh, Okama, yeah, no, okay, yeah, yeah, I don't know, I'm just it's and maybe it's because they're difficult subjects, but I guess I'm being a little just careful about some of the things I bring up. But anyway, I'll just keep going with the video.
Cool. So, while any framing of the girls in the show as lesbian is worth the raised eyebrow in itself, this setup is also important for the general setting of the show that gives context to why this scene is happening in the first place. Maki has virtually no experience with boys outside of fiction and fantasy, and that lack of understanding has given her a warped idea of how romance works. The premise of the show also being a vehicle to both use her lack of understanding for comedy and gradually open her eyes to reality. Her
Even
fantasies
just
are often
like it's Toko Como, so even just the animation is funny. Like it's she's so fucking stupid, dude.
thought and very over the top, while ultimately based in ignorance due to lack of experience, and this extends to her explorations of love. Maki puts everything into what she does, which lends itself to the humor of the series. This curious desire is eventually put to use as the student council begins to receive anonymous questions from the student body from girls not knowledgeable or secure in themselves or what they know, seeking out the young authority for romantic advice and forcing the only slightly less ignorant girls to put in the work so that they can find a worthwhile answer. And this finally brings us to the aforementioned scene.
Yep.
Nana of the Journalism Club, whose skin is notably darker.
Oh,
than
thank
Maki,
God. Okay, see, for
making
some
the-
reason, I remember this video a while ago, and I was like, wait a minute, the anime kind of like, because I remember one of the complaints about the anime that I heard was how these two journalism club members ask questions to the council. One of them is like, what about girls with dark skin? And the other is like, what about chubby girls? But the anime kind of like reduced those elements of the characters, so it's less possible to notice. So it's harder to notice that like this character is darker skin and this one is chubbier. So I was just like, oh, thank God I did bring it up, because I remember thinking about it a while ago. And I was like, did I bring that up in the video? Because that's pretty fucking important in regards to like, because that's context you wouldn't have from just watching the anime. Like I could understand, I could more easily understand why someone would miss. Because I don't remember, maybe I don't think they directly state that the two journalism club members made that asked those questions. It was just implied. But I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read or watched Love Lab. But yeah, I'm glad I brought it up at least. So
connection easier to miss in the anime, asked whether or not boys even like girls with darker skin, and as per the formula, Maki went all in, attempting to emulate girls with darker skin
God.
to examine their potential appeal. Her efforts were completely useless to the actual question, and how this is meant to be framed in the story is apparent as soon as Maki is shown to be taking
she's
these
so
actions.
stupid.
Rico
Oh my
opens the door
God,
to see
why?
Maki in makeup posing with Daki. This echoes back to the scene.
Like
from
I
the
don't,
first
I
episode in which
understand
Rico-
people having problems with it. I guess, like I'll say that, but because it's like she's a stupid child and she's doing something really, really dumb. But it's like, oh my God, why is this the way what you're doing? Interesting. Cheating culture. I haven't heard about that. Maybe I have, like secondhand, but I might look into that myself. But yeah.
First discovered Maki's awkward and laughable attempts at trying to learn about love by her lonesome, which in turn means Maki is to be ridiculed right out the gate. And as has become normal by this point, Riko's first response in the scene is to smack her upside the head with a paper fan, the show's recurring shorthand gag for telling off characters on their dumb shit. Sayo has a boyfriend and Riko has more interactions with boys, so they are often the straight men there to rear in the antics of their stupid peers, who are just that, stupid. Though to clarify,
Oh,
Eno
God.
and Suzu are not actually wearing makeup in this scene, something else cut out in the clip shared in the tweet. Only Maki is, because she's the only one who acts in the most exaggerated manner. They are portrayed like this to draw attention to the subject matter as they give accounts from their older siblings, who each had something particular in mind when thinking of dark-skinned girls and gave their preferences. Their takes are also not to be taken too seriously, as Eno's brother is pretty much outright a degenerate loser, and while Suzu's didn't appear in the show outside of a flashback from several years ago, his take is even more extreme, and as it's framed next to Eno's brother, it doesn't exactly leave him in a positive light. Pretty much every character involved in the commentary is framed as stupid and ignorant in their understanding, and none of this is remotely apparent in the 13-second selection from the tweet. Regardless of intent, the tweet
Okay,
is
sorry. It said 8. It said 8 seconds, but it's probably like 8 seconds through or 8 seconds left. Okay,
framed in a way
I
to
got
remove
I confused
or even
myself.
obfuscate as much context as possible, sharing a shallow surface picture with no regard to what the characters are like, off-screen or otherwise, and the full range of responses and explorations to the core question, one originally asked by a girl who's on some level insecure about what makes her different. And this context is needed because how the show handles its material is ultimately how its messages are sent, which at this point should be very clear. These are the stupid actions of ignorant children, trying to learn and understand things in clumsy ways, because they are children, the joke being done at their expense. With that in mind, I do want to discuss some of the ideas brought up in the responses, specifically about comparisons to blackface and ganguro, of which this is really evocative of neither. Blackface refers to a practice done by entertainers throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s America, where white actors would portray black characters. These shows spiked in popularity after the Civil War, where tensions were falling but still relatively high. These portrayals would gradually fade away, but not before finding their way into other media like film. Through blackface, white producers, actors, and songwriters could craft portrayals of what is not just a minority population, but an oppressed one.
Yeah, no, Traverser, what you're saying about like, uptick in people having think racism or sexism is could be an endorsement or whatever, and yeah, no, people like I read an article. I'm just gonna link it or put it somewhere. I'm gonna maybe get blackspace off the screen first.
Access to for years to come. These
okay, no, that's still
portrayals would lead into negative stereotypes like ignorance, laziness, or criminality, perpetuating preconceived notions and solidifying.
Okay, close enough. Okay, I just wanted to link the it was a could I even find it? Oh my god. Shit. It was about lack of sex scenes in Hollywood, and I remember it has this really interesting bit about how like because media has more I think I found it. Let me scroll through just to double check. Oh no, maybe not. Nope, never mind. That was not it. But basically, it's just the idea that because like media consumption is such a like the way that is. Never mind, I can't find it. But like basically, they've just brought up an interesting point about how morality has become tied to the media that we like, and they railed on it because again, like that, we're suggesting that maybe that's part of the reason we don't get a lot of sex scenes in Hollywood anymore, because people are pulling away from that problematic content, and because you see it and people automatically assume the worst, right? So yeah, but I could not find because yeah, I don't know. I feel like in this chat, I feel like people have a pretty good understanding of just like how you can handle these aspects in media, right? Where just like obviously it's not an endorsement, so I could go in more, but I will watch the video for now. I'll try to find that article later after the stream because we've only been going for 2 hours almost, and we have 10 minutes left of this video, so there might be some extra time. I'll try to remember later.
Persecutions that would justify the continued marginalization of these populations. You'll notice that in her videos on Woke Disney and Mel Brooks, Lindsay Ellis doesn't just say, the crows being coated with black stereotypes is bad, or the racist cowboy is ignorant and stupid. She highlights the white-dominated industries behind them, where a dominant race is controlling the popularized image of the non-dominant race, through both a form of a sort of animated blackface and a character who is framed as a fool because reality doesn't match the politics fed to him by the media he's familiar with. Blackface isn't just non-black individuals putting on makeup, it's a symbol of a dominant race controlling the representation of the marginalized, something completely different if the context is changed.
I will say, because I was worried about like, my voice, like by the way I brought up Zari's video, I'm drowning out a black voice. I don't know, because that's still a problem, but at least I'm not only using my words. Like, here's some other articles and readings regarding this topic that are relevant and important, so, but, not that that saves it, but,
can mean burnt black look, tan dark, or even black face, is not a form of racial expression as much as it originates from gender. Ganguro fashion took off in the 90s, inverting fair skin and dark hair with dark skin and light hair to challenge or oppose the conventional standards of.
I think this was a direct response to Zarya's video because he'd said that, like, I think he said something like blackface is never okay or something, and this was like a challenge to that because I was like here because I like the way I literally referred to Gongoro as explain how it can mean blackface, where it's like because I guess like that's related to how I see just general like symbols and language is that context matters, right? So in yeah, when with white actors putting on blackface to replace black actors in a white dominated industry, that's an example of blackface as something terrible. But then in Japan, where even before interactions with white peoples, having lighter colored skin was considered beauty, as I understand it. I could be wrong on that. Putting on darker makeup as a form of counterculture, like, I don't know. It's I'm not gonna say it's automatically good because counterculture, let's go, but I don't want to say it's automatically bad either. And in that, I'm challenging Zarya's point, I suppose. But I only used like one or two sources, and there was an article I found that I don't know if I mentioned. I don't think I did, but it was talking about how racism against black people in Japan, because obviously it's Japan, it has plenty of racism, and maybe I'm like not going in enough of that to that, but because again, I don't think it's a problem for Love Lab because it's ultimately like it has characters in blackface, but it's like, well, they're stupid, right? Like what was the one movie, Tropic Thunder, where it had Robert Downey Jr. His character was in blackface, right? Like I saw people being mad about that because it's like they're just automatically seeing it in black when it's like, well, the point is that this character is stupid and wrong for doing this, and that's his arc in the movie. At the end of the movie, he takes off the blackface, right? But anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh, interesting. Okay, I forgot about the black. I have heard the blackened tooth part before, but I don't. It's been a while. Okay, yeah. So, because like there's still layers to consider that with, just the relationship of America and Japan and how like I've heard blonde hair is really popular in Japan as well. So just like it's not so it's like you can't completely divorce like they always liked or fetish where saw white light skin as having being beautiful, right? But I don't know, it's just like it's complex, and I'm just trying to think about how I could have done better as always. That said, I do think so far this video is fine. Like I still have my issues coming up when I talk about Zarya specifically, but so far it's okay.
Beauty that had been pushed for decades. And virtually none of either of these applies to Love Lab except the most basic application of lighter skinned characters wearing makeup to be darker. The soul sister imagery evoked isn't even of blackface racial caricatures, but black performers from a healthier time for entertainment where those groups were able to represent themselves and battle for their rights. Maki's imitation is misguided, but it's also based in what is ultimately a more positive image of the subject matter, and nothing about the scene really pays any mind or calls attention to Gongoro or derivative fashions. But I still intend to highlight the importance of context.
I want to highlight that because people are saying, oh, it's Gongoro, and it's like, no, it's not. That's not what she's doing. Like, that's not the point, like, of what she's doing, so.
Here because yes, media should be viewed critically, but in discussing the scene, I've highlighted two very distinct examples of blackface. One a symbol of racial oppression, expressed to ridicule and belittle the already stigmatized, and the other an expression of beauty in opposition of a homogeneous norm. One in favor of the harmful status quo, one pushing away from tired norms. Both evoked through the vaguely similar core act of heavy applications of dark makeup. A skin-deep observation is just that, and trying to equate the dated practices of a society with actual centuries of slavery and oppression in their history to stupid girls who are punished
that's what I was trying to about the article that I read. Is it was talking about how some of Japan's racism against black people was like learned from outside cultures. And it was interesting. I don't know if I fully agree with every point, but it brought up some interesting thoughts that I hadn't considered. Right, so it's like I don't want it to say like, oh, Japan does have a history of racism. It is much like shorter than America's history of racism, but it's still a history of racism. Like there was actually, I did see a brief news article about I don't know if he was black, but he did have dreadlocks, and a police officer just targeted basically because and you know, like there was racial profiling at work there. So I guess I don't know. I don't want to make an assumption of exactly what went on because it's been a while since I saw it, but I just, you know, because it was in rebuttal to people saying that, oh, Japan doesn't have this problem. That's mostly because there's mostly Japanese people in Japan, not because there's no less racism. I mean, I don't know. It's a whole thing. And yeah, Murray, that's a good point. Because yeah, I guess you could say that there is. Well, I don't know, because like the idea of like separating a fictional character doing blackface versus a real human being doing blackface. But then I guess the other layer to that is like again the difference between like Birth of a Nation, where you have white actors portraying blackface to represent black people. Contrast that with, say, again, Tropic Thunder or It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where you have white actors putting on blackface to mock the idea of doing blackface, right? Because those you can't watch those episodes on streaming platforms; they took them off, and one of them was pretty recent too. I think it was season 13, and the newest season was like 15. I might be misremembering my numbers, but because it's like as far as just my ideals on art in general, I'm very pro expression and pro freedom, right? So I don't want like so part of me is like I don't want to say just we can't do blackface, but obviously that's a clip that could be taken out of fucking context. Fuck, why did I say that? Like, God, I was about to repeat it again for humor, but I'm gonna not do that. In fact, but it's like because again, like with nuance, you can use things in meaningful ways, right? Because at the end, like you know, especially I guess considering just like racial history of like yeah, with casting, right? Like there's even a sort of like I've noticed a trend against that with because with Apu, fuck, I forget the character from The Simpsons because I haven't watched it. I want to know. I think it's Apu, where he was being voiced by a white actor, and then there was the problem with Apu documentary, and he was replaced with an actual actor representative of his race. With X-Men '97, Jubilee's actress is returning, but the character herself is being replaced with an Asian voice actress, basically, because the character is Asian and she was voiced by a non-Asian person in the original show. Um, right, so there's an example of like, yeah, that criticism, and I think that's fair of like having people of one race representing another. That's you know that you know there's potential like yeah jobs being taken away from the people who represent those roles basically. And even when you do have proper representation, there's still issues of casting with just like I remember seeing an ad. It was probably it was from a comedy show. My friend showed me it was like it was Snickers but changed to be more related to the racial term to refer to black people. And the joke was that like um they'd have when you're dealing with systemic racism, have this candy bar. And one of the examples was they were in a casting room for a pimp role, and like because I guess for some reason in the '90s people were obsessed with pimp culture, and so like they need a black person to play the black pimp, I guess, right? So it's like so that's just an example of like you know how much work did black actors have, right, that in varied and interesting roles when they like even when they were getting roles, right, like even in the you know the like the roles that necessitated blackface in the older movies weren't interesting characters. They were caricatures, negative caricatures used to espouse racist ideology basically, right? um so it's like so I guess in that way I think like portraying a white character to mock in blackface to mock back blackface, like I think because you can't like they can't just like we're just gonna cast fucking Dee Reynolds as a black actress for this one blackface scene. Like no, they're all horrible fucking people, and that's part of the bit, right? So I think I'm fine with like that. But obviously I'm not fine with like yeah the classic applications of blackface, right? Except again like I'd rather like you know they not be censored or read you know because it's like they're a part of history and we need to understand the history and not look away from it. But that's the whole thing. Oh yeah, I understand what you mean with like because that's true with like dubs and stuff, but obviously like that's you know very different. But I feel like again if you're talking about just general representation, Because with dubs, we're not displacing the original actors necessarily. Like like people still like you can watch the show with its subtitles, right? Like now, it's more about accessibility. So I understand where you're coming from. Like you said, you weren't coming from it that way in general, but just that I has to explain why that's different. It's not like even because there's also remaking movies, right? Like I remember or Parasite is being remade in America because we want a worse version that has non-Asian actors, right? So like the original version still exists and those actors got paid. Um, so I don't know. It's like I'm not saying like, but there's still like a legitimization there of like, oh, if it gets made in Hollywood, that means it matters now, right? But it's like, so that's pretty dumb. Um, and that there's definitely maybe not explicit. Is that race? I don't know because it's just like most people just can't watch things with subtitles. I think or don't. So I don't know. Well, even though I say that, apparently there was a very recent like a lot of people do watch subtitles. Use subtitles even when watching English stuff, and some explanations as to why I saw people mentioning like the sound balancing being really fucking off in movies because so they'll just have the volume lower so it doesn't like jump scare them with fucking a suddenly loud scene, and but they can actually tell what's being said. Um, yeah, okay, so Traverse bringing up a bunch of interesting. Oh man, there's a bunch of um, yeah, just see a bunch of people bring up some interesting stuff. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to keep going back to video because it's a lot.
Being stupid in a culture far removed from that history really just undermines and ignores what it really is that needs to be remembered. Is the emotional response wrong? No. Even if the similarity is shallow, it's still going to be emotionally evocative of the problematic elements even if there's no connection. It's understandable to be put off because of it, but it doesn't become wrong because of the knee-jerk negative responses. No piece of media can be sensitive to every person or even culture. Media has the right to offend. I definitely think this is a conversation that needed to happen at some point. Discussion of media is as important to people as engaging with it in
Wait,
the
hold on.
first
I
place.
did not read that quote aloud. I did, but I didn't read. Oh, this is just from the Lindsay Ellis video. Okay.
Important to people as
Gotcha.
engaging with it in the first place. And that includes the problematic parts. This was the ultimate sentiment of the Under the Scope video on problematic media. Art needs to be critically examined, which was a major sentiment of
Oh yeah, the other I guess another point of that coming up recently because there was a Tomb Raider. Wow, I could not pronounce that for shit. Remaster that just came out, and they put a warning of like this series has some problematic depictions that we don't agree with now. Be aware of that when you play the game. And I remember seeing a discussion about it where someone was like they shouldn't have included it at all, or they were thinking like, well, no, they were saying they're profiting off of racism basically, right? They're releasing this old game and they're keeping the racist parts in there, so they're continuing to profit off the racism. But like, obviously, my take on that is that like, the alternative is like you're not able to play Tomb Raider, right? Like, what modern platforms is it available on, right? Like, yeah, like, is it easy to get? Like, I don't actually know. Like, maybe the old versions were on Steam. Um, but the new one seems to be like really solid as a remaster overall from what little I've seen. And yeah, the fact that I don't want the history to be ignored or buried. I want it to be recognized, right? I want us to be aware of like there's a fucking perfect example on the screen right now of just like actual racism in America's history that is we want to be acknowledge it, right? So and no, yeah, actually, yeah, thank you, because I heard that line about media has the right to offend, where I agree, right? But people don't want to be offended, so and yeah, Disney is not nearly as good about like they are burying the history. Like when was the last time Song of the South got an official release? I watched it recently. It's not a good movie, but the quality I watched it in sucked, right? Like because they're not they are trying, I mean, I don't know, they've got to be some examples, because obviously, like, it's still around, it's still available, but like, like Lindsay Ellis made a joke in her Dumbo video about how they even turned the feather white, like they not only removed the clothes, but the fucking feather got whitewashed. So just it's because they're not addressing their problematic history in some ways, but it's a whole thing.
His sister Krona video. However, what ultimately holds back both of these videos, the Under the Scope video in particular, is sadly all too common. I don't see any citations.
People need to cite their shit.
Hey, oh, that's right. Because Zaria did in fact cite his shit. But specifically, the issue I had was the the fiction affects reality point, and Zaria didn't have an example specifically highlighting that. I don't know if I brought that up in the video, but I remember that's what I was responding to. But the way I frame it is that there's no point or nothing cited, which was just factually incorrect, and I did include a correction in the description of the video or the comment or whatever. I amended it in some way, and it was dumb of a mistake to make in the first place. So yeah.
I'm not asking for anything more than some links.
Oh my god! I just noticed a fuck.
Don't
Oh,
see
god
any
damn it! I just noticed
People
a
need to
editor
cite their
gag.
shit.
At the top there, old pervert boomer talks about perverts. That's okay. That's kind of funny. And yeah, I think I also did not like that video. Like in comparison, like of the two videos, the Under the Scope Monogatari one, because even Mathwiz, as someone who does not like perverted stuff, really, and does not really care for that aspect of Monogatari, she still says, and I remember her saying at the time, is like, it's you, because I think one of the lines Under the Scope had was about enjoying Monogatari like in spite of that or something, and I guess, but like it's an intrinsic part of Monogatari, like it's a part of the characterization. Like you can't, if you cut it out of Monogatari, like it's not Monogatari anymore, right? And so maybe I was wrong about the way Underscope worded it, but I just remember Mathis had a way with the way it was worded, and just because it's like, even if Mathis doesn't like that aspect of Monogatari at all, she still recognizes that it's part of the series, and even she still likes Monogatari, right? So yeah, it's been a while since I saw the video, obviously, so I can't comment specifics. I just remember that coming up.
And I'm not asking for anything more than some links in the description, or even just mentions in the video, but a complete absence, I think, is problematic in itself, especially when both videos make one similar claim.
Yeah, hold on. Which video is this?
More than some links in the description, or even just mentions in the video, but a complete...
Yeah, that was the Under the Scope video, because yeah, he didn't cite anything.
Complete absence
that I know
think,
of, and there's a
is
comment,
problematic
but
in itself, especially when both videos
if what
make
noticed the
one similar
Zaria
claim.
thing and
Zaria's
didn't
video
tell me
at
before
several
the video
points
came out, that's
insists on
really
the potential
unfortunate.
harm being done as a result of Krone's portrayal.
Yeah, see,
One
that's
of
what's not cited was what harm is, because that's where I kind of like get hung up of just like I think, what was the other video I mentioned it on? It was a Monster Hunter video where, because the idea of like, oh, Monster Hunter is pro-colonialism, like, okay, point at the harm being done. And I guess maybe that's an impossible question of like, because like how, because it's not like there's zero examples of history potentially like affecting mindsets, I guess, or fiction affecting mindsets. Like I remember Uncle Tom's Cabin, because I was watching a Disney short where it was actually, funnily enough, it was the one where Mickey put on blackface, and because he and a bunch of other Disney characters were doing a performance of Uncle Tom's Cabin, and I was like, I feel like I've heard that before, and I looked it up, and apparently, like, so one is that the plays change things a lot from the book, and two is that even though like there's levels at which the original book was racist, there's a potential, like a fictionalized or potentially probably apocryphal like idea that the original book, because basically it made the slaves more sympathetic, and supposedly like there was a whole like that like northern versus southern like slave fiction where like southern works portrayed slaves as like children needing guidance, and northern ones gave them more sympathy, to the point that it's cited for being a factor leading to the American Civil War, because it gave more sympathy to slaves and made the North anti-slavery, basically, right? So that's an example of a fictional work that challenges the established norms and could very well have had a very powerful and meaningful effect. So, but like, how do you tell when? Because I feel like the opposite is also true, where it's very possible that, or it's the opposite is also very possible where it's like popular works become popular because they already connect with people. And again, it's not to say that fictional works can't change people's minds. Like another example, just a smaller example. I remember someone in the comments of Lindsay Ellis's Rent video said that their grandma became more sympathetic towards like gay people through watching Rent, even though obviously Lindsay Ellis had a lot of problems with the or musical rather. I said movie, but but like there was an example of positive change to come from this not good musical. I think I don't even remember if Rent was a movie or musical or both. Because I'm pretty there in my memory there was a film adaptation at least. But so because yeah, I feel like if you're railing against something for potential harm, then that's not like a good productive discussion, right? Because you're basically like it's on Twitter. It's like imagining a guy to get mad at, right? So that's what I was hoping for a source for of an example, because sure a racist depiction can perpetuate like racism that already exists, and certainly a lot of the depictions back in the early in that time period did so. But as I mentioned with old Uncle Tom's Cabin, it's like, well, here's a book that by modern standards is racist, but historically is very important for for moving away from that, right? So it's like it's a really hard subject to so maybe I was asking too much from Zaria, but I feel like when you make such a strong claim as to exaggerate a bit, like yeah, Monogatari is making more people into sex pests, or Promise Neverland is making more people racist. Like I don't think that's the case, right? Like I really like I think that's absurd to say, and I'm sure both Zaria and Under the Scope know that. But there's still those lines of that videos that just rub me the wrong way. Oh yeah, no, that's a good point, Traverse. About like yeah, the adults in Promised Neverland or in general are oppressive and scary. Because even Isabella has moments where she's fucking terrifying. Like there's a panel where she's like crouched down to the kid's level and her eyes are really open, right? So yeah, I guess it is kind of weird to highlight Crone specifically. But I don't know. I'd have to think more about like is she portrayed, because like if you just look at portrayal, because narratively I'd say she and Isabella both have positive relations with the children as well. Like Crone's like one of the most important supporting characters in the series, and there's some context we get from her later, and there's even a fucking extra like one shot chapter that goes into more backstory with her. Like she's great. So I don't know. And like I said earlier, there's things I had to take away from her design, um, related to American slavery that Zaria didn't bring up. So, but again, I don't talk about those aspects there. Um, Oh yeah, actually, what you just made me think of Jamal about like, yeah, a lot of people it doesn't do anything, or because I just thought about how there's been a lot of discourse for Starship Troopers lately because of Helldivers 2, probably, and I haven't seen Starship Troopers, but from the discourse, the take seemed to be that it's a very like anti-fascist movie, but in doing so, it's like it does so by being framed as a propaganda film, so it's deliberately trying to like hedge and make it look cool and good, and some people watch it and see the cool and good parts and go like yeah, and people who think it's just about fashion are stupid, it's about killing bugs. But then so there's just an example of like it's a movie that like I don't know, because I feel like, because you could say like, oh, it's making people more fascist. Is it doing that, or is it just making people who are fascist like agree with the movie? Like I don't know, because obviously I think a lot of people just like they say they don't disagree with Hitler and the Holocaust, but then they'd actually, if they lived during that time period, they'd probably be pretty okay with what's going on. And I mean, just the fact that there's a little genocide going on right now, um, and people are justifying it, even though it's horrific and evil and horrible. Yeah. Yeah, no, I did. I don't, because again, I don't know about the original novel or the. I haven't touched any of it, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, oh boy, it was getting spicy. No, it was spicy from the beginning.
Making the
Alright,
same
I'll
racial
watch more of the video.
caricatures that would have been prevalent in the same time as blackface. Zarya claims that this portrayal could cause real harm, insisting that Krone will somehow cause people to view others negatively based on what her character evokes. Not only does she fail to offer any citations to such a claim, but in the video
Just go to the fucking. Well, I mean, there was a comment with the sources. So I guess like both me and What the What missed that, or again What the What saw it and didn't like ask me to change that part of the video, because I would have sucked to have to re-record that whole re-record that whole part of the video, but I have integrity, like I would have done that. You know, but true, she doesn't cite that part. It is very speculative, and I don't think that's a great point to bring up. When people credit, I feel like it's less about the work itself and more about the narratives that have gone unquestioned previously and using their opportunity. See, that's a good point, because I have thought about that. Like, I think probably the most common area I think about it is with One Piece, because people talk about like how like the main character, like Nami and Vivi, like they're all like very sexual and like attractive and based, or even it's even an idea I think of it that applied to Inside Out, because people talk about how like the girls in that in the they're all round and soft, but the guys are more like cartoony and they're very different shapes. And when you like, because One Piece does have variety in body types if you look at like the Amazons and the whole Big Mom's children, but it's not really across the whole manga in the same way, where obviously the guys are way more varied, because it's like, yeah, you can use the smaller thing to talk about the bigger thing, but usually people don't do that. And in this, I'd say Zarya, like, I don't remember the video well enough to say that Zarya does or doesn't. But I guess like, because I don't know, it's like when I get come to that, it's like, well, why does it have to be like this small work? Because it's hot topical. Like that's probably a reason. Like obviously, like doing videos on seasonal anime was the thing, and Promised Neverland would have been a seasonal show that Zarya talked about back then, right? So, but if that's the case, I also especially like think of that article I read about racism in Japan being like learned from America. There's like ways that the subject could have been brought in, but again, that's like a lot of research and stuff to be done. That fucking article paper might not have even been written at the time of the Zarya's video coming out. So yeah. Ooh, anyway, oh, I guess Traverse is heading out. All right, goodbye. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this video because yeah, stream's been going on for a minute, and we got Jesus. I feel like this. I don't think it's true that this section is taking longer than the Monster Hunter one, but it's definitely taking like longer per minute.
He even points out a number of other black characters in anime, other portrayals that run counter to Krone's depiction, and prevent this one character from creating a holistic view of her race. And that's without mentioning examples from Shonen Jump itself, one the target audience for The Promised Neverland would likely be familiar with. Ending the same year as Promised Neverland started, you have Bleach, with characters such as Yoriichi, Yushiro, or Tosen. Boruto and Naruto, taking place in the same setting, would have had the manga for Boruto starting the same year while Naruto's anime was still ongoing. In that world exists Kumo Gakure, many of the characters from that region being black, with Killer Bee even rapping to deliberately call attention to what that fantasy setting portrays, because outside of that one character trait, it's just a matter of design. No holistic stereotyping existing among the various portrayals. These examples from Jump's mega hits would be much closer to the public consciousness
Yeah,
of
I guess
readers,
my point is like,
even putting aside Western media being imported.
Just talking
all of
about
which
like
would challenge how an
because it's
individual
like
would come to.
I think that's kind of something I came to in my pervert character. No, it was it the pervert? No, just the idea of like when fiction. No, okay, now I remember because so in my Kill la Kill video, I referenced a 300-page paper on magical girls, and I remember there was one of the correspondents who she was an older lady as a correspondent, but she grew up watching, I think it was Ako-chan, And as a kid, there was a part of her that wanted to have hair like Ako-chan, right? So there's an example of fiction influencing a young child. But even at that young age, she realized that like if she actually got that hairstyle, she'd probably be like made fun of for it, right? Because she's imitating a cartoon, basically. So when we're talking about fiction affecting like influencing people's minds and stuff, which I guess maybe that's just what I was assuming they were talking about, or maybe they directly mentioned it, or maybe that's just like because maybe that's the only way I can perceive it potentially being insidious, right? And there are negative examples of that happening. There was Gecko Kamen, a old tokusatsu show that a child jumped to their death imitating one of the stunts, and it affected how tokusatsu was made from that point on. And then that sucks and that happens. But it's really unfortunate. But I guess because I think I brought that up in maybe it was a pervert character video, but I talk about just the idea of like when you get something from a piece of fiction, you also judge it against everything else that you know or in your reality, like what your parents have given you. So I guess if I talk about this, I'm saying like, hey, why the fuck? Hold on, I just realized that like there's like a watermark there. So just like the footage that he got for the video, I guess, and I didn't notice it or asked him to change it, but unfortunate. So yeah, I guess that's my point there, where I'm like, here's these other fictional examples that would also inform anyone coming away from Promised Neverland with a negative perception, right? So again, I'd be more worried about like people being like a racist person using Krona as some kind of argument in some kind of shitty narrative, basically. Like that'd be more likely than someone going through Promised Neverland and having a more negative takeaway on like a black person because of that. But I don't know. That's just postulation. So maybe I'm just being dumb.
See a group of people as a result of the single portrayal that is Sister Krone. It's insinuated that harm could come about from her design and character, but this is just assumed as factual. No doubt given if it's even probable, while not even trying to argue how that might be the case. The Under the Scope video is even more baffling through its contradictory points. There's no universal moral code, yet Monogatari's presentation apparently has real-world implications that are a matter of public safety, actively endangering people by existing. Oh yeah, and
I don't remember
accusing
that
his
point being
audience
made,
of
but
having
Jesus
been
fucking
unknowingly
Christ.
been given harmful beliefs about women because...
Oh, and there's...
Take the treatment of female characters in so many harem anime.
like Monogatari.
It's naive to think nobody is going to watch that and internalize such attitudes. Not when they self-insert as MC-kun negging a bunch of schoolgirls.
Like people who watch Monogatari, who would be watching this video. The claim takes a presumed cause and extrapolates an imagined effect, with no evidence or meaningful link between the two, promoting the vilification of media and deflecting examination away from the actual attitudes and behaviors exhibited by people, instead shifting blame onto art that might reflect those behaviors. One of the examples he shows is Shield Hero, a show where people flock to say how problematic its depiction of slavery.
I had not watched Shield Hero at the time that I made this video. I have now. I have thoughts. But I don't know if I'm actually curious as to what I said back then when I hadn't watched Shield Hero.
While others argue
no,
that the
I
way the
didn't say
series handles its subject matter
right.
ultimately frames the protagonist in the wrong for the actions that he takes. Understanding art and
Okay,
how it's
I don't say
engaged
that
with
much,
is
okay.
something Under the Scope brings up, yet he has nothing backing up his claims that run counter to actual studies and evidence, while also ignoring culture. His observations are at complete odds with the moe culture that's intrinsic and crucial to understanding the aesthetic of anime, one that rejects the real in favor of the unreal. But Under the Scope doesn't recognize these viewpoints directly, because to do so would undermine his own flawed arguments that don't line up with accounts made by actual industry personnel and experts. Without proper context, there is only ignorance. The lack of sources doesn't just hurt the wrongful points in the video, but even the ones I happen to agree with. Yes, we do need to have conversations about problematic media, but why is it necessary, as the lack of sources might imply, to refuse to hear out voices already contributing to the conversation with meaningful points and observations, in particular, those from the country.
Every fucking time I bring up the lack of sources, I'm just like, you dense motherfucker. God, it's just every fucking time I'm losing my fucking mind.
Of the media in question. This video is only one part of a conversation, a part that has shut itself off to everything, and as a result, says nothing. Without recognizing the parts of the conversation that have already been said, it refuses to challenge the ethnocentric
Who is
view of
that?
the Western anime community and continues to spread the same misinformation and lies.
Because I don't think that's my hand or what the what's hand. So I guess he just looked up a video of did he ask a friend to record it? Where did that video come from? That's interesting. Oh yeah, Jamal, that's a good point about because I remember, I think it was in my perfect character video I brought up like violence and stuff, and I think I felt like maybe they weren't bringing it up to like clown to like contradict my points, but they brought up a study about how like the reason that video games don't increase like violence is because people are already very familiar with violence through other cultural osmosis, and I felt that added to my point in the perfect character video because I talked about how like if we have outside things to judge, then it's hard to be influenced by one thing because you're judging it against everything else that you know and your lived experience, and right. So with violence, it's like, yeah, we are constantly fed depictions of violence. Like I was even thinking about how it's like the fact that like a lot of people here probably come to me for my content on Battle Shonen, right? So even if like in reality I don't like the idea of being in a fight, I don't pay attention to combat sports, I don't really agree with like fucking war and innocents being hurt, but I also still think violence is fucking cool, right? Like because that's the culture I grew up in, a culture that very much loves violence, right? So like we want more varied depictions, I guess, and that because like there's more variants and more perspectives and more so in that way, like I think having Zarya's video is good, even if I don't fully agree with it, because that's the thing, I don't talk about it as like because I don't like the way I definitely like Zarya's video way more than like the End of the Scope video, and I personally try to I like it when I do, because I feel like even if a lot of my takes, like I like One Piece, one of the most popular things on the planet, right? Especially right now. Like that's not an unusual take, but I like to think that most of my videos are still saying something different, something that maybe not a lot of or not enough people are talking about. But yeah, and that's another reason why I want more like women or trans or black creators, right? Because those are more perspectives to take into account, and that goes back to my fault with this video where I think I don't really like how I'm speaking over a black voice. So anyway, even if I still don't agree with that voice, like I don't think I'm being disrespectful to Zarya, I'd say, or even Under the Scope, even if I didn't like that video, right? But yeah, anyway,
Only forgetting that it is viewing the works of a foreign nation and what that means in regards to discussing it. Even just the opener to Outline of a Theory of Practice, which I haven't gone beyond because I was definitely going above my reading level,
Yep,
was a big help to me in regards to framing discussions of other cultures in which what I know and experience in daily life is not the subject of. Citations aren't there for legitimization or feeling smart about yourself. Without evidence to a claim, it has a right to be dismissed. No, this isn't a field of academia, this is YouTube,
meme video.
but basic rhetoric and intellectual honesty should still be required.
This isn't a beach, it's a bathtub. Oh god, I was like, what is that? No, that's like it's a fucking pornographic video, I'm pretty sure. And the editing it's funny.
With even the least bit of integrity, and expected as the norm by any viewer who has investment in what they are viewing. There's a lot of good and accessible worthwhile reading out there. You can get papers off of academia.edu for free, some books you can even get at your library, or I could just pirate them like you do anime. It's an easily accessible wealth of knowledge and talking points to be used. Showing your work is important. My Perfect Characters video would have benefited from the essay The Return of the Sex Wars by Patrick Galbraith, in which you covered a much more extreme and explicit topic with voices such as law professor Hiroshi Nakasatomi, feminist Yukari Fujimoto, and dozens of sources from decades worth of discussion, settling on a few points I just happened to stumble into, except with much more concise exploration and observations to boot. These Japanese perspectives bolstered the topics surrounding Japanese media, and I don't think coming from a background of theory and watching consumer reviews is an excuse for—
He just had to dig on Manny Matt, which is like, on one hand, it's Manny Matt, he's kind of like, his videos are just kind of a headache to get through, but I don't know, just so out of left field, it's like
YouTubers to not have basic diligence and respect for the topics they cover.
He's just using what I'm saying to just clown on him hard.
There's a lot we don't have access to because of the language barrier, but that's not an excuse for refusing to put in effort. There's plenty available.
I will
in English
say,
at-
I don't know, because it's like I don't talk to What the What anymore. As I understand, he's still doing okay. And yeah, he was my friend, and we had a lot of fun. Like there's a part of me that does miss the old dynamic on the Weeb Club because it was chaos and it was really fun. I don't miss that he just constantly bring up YouTubers he had problems with and dunk on them constantly. And like you could tell who he had a problem with when he made this video because Man Matt is not relevant to the topic at all. But he's just like he has to show him as a negative because he probably watched the Man Matt video and was like, oh, which is fair. It's a Man Matt video. They do that. They have that tendency, which is really unfortunate because he has somebody. There's got to be some that are at least like fine, but none of the handful I've watched for. But just like I don't know. It's unfortunate, and yeah, it shows in this video. But yeah. Know when they see video on violence and battle manga? Yeah, I don't know.
as is. And if you don't want to put in the effort, then just don't make claims that need to be backed up because casual audiences aren't going to be scrutinous of them. A little doubt, and that Love Lab tweet would have never gotten a huge amount of views that it did. I tend to agree with the general points brought up in, say, Under the Scope's Monogatari Hidamari sketch videos, Zeru's Sister Kone one, or many of Lindsay Ellis's. But Lindsay differs in that she talks about Western media with a Western lens, and her ability to frame her discussions and give good readings of the material makes me feel like a lot is to be desired when I look back on AnyTube. Well, except Pause and Select,
Just cite your shit.
but the cultural talking points there are actually on Japanese matters like nationalism and isekai. I just see Lindsay as a more relevant comparisons due to similar topics being covered.
Yeah, I feel like
And
this is a
no,
little
I'm
out
not
in the
perfect,
weeds.
but I've discovered my own ignorance
Oh,
more
wow.
times.
Just
For
digs on
instance,
me.
in her videos on Moana and Bright, I was able to learn more about.
See that part bothered me because like not I didn't even really notice it when I made the video, but because he mentioned later how he really didn't like my pronunciation of Moana, which I haven't seen the movie. I don't fucking know how it's pronounced. And I think Nuns also commented on me editing my audio, and it just bothered me that I sent my videos out to be edited and they just edited them and they didn't tell me if they had problems with the video or if they like, because they could have said, hey, can you re-record this line and pronounce it fucking correctly, you idiot? Like, I guess, and maybe it was too much to ask of them because they were just editing the video. They weren't like being editors in a sense. But at the time, and even now to a degree, we still like talk to each other. And I like to think, so it was just a little disappointing because like, I had them read my scripts because I wanted them to like talk about my point. Like, did they not think I'd be receptive? Like, I don't know. Now I'm just being maybe a little too personal, but it was just I don't know, explaining what that edit was because I don't even remember it. I just remember later he mentioned like really not liking how I pronounced the name, but he didn't tell me about that before the video came out. I didn't watch the movie. I didn't know. So I don't know.
To learn more about cultural appropriation and coding than random internet discourse ever could show me, helping me to better understand and know the things I don't know. She doesn't claim the problematic aspects as the fault of the art, but explores the context of the culture and systems behind them. Even if I ultimately agree with core points such as cute girls anime and Hidamari sketch are good, how the point is reasoned and framed will be intrinsic to his value as an argument, and citations, perspectives, or voices are part of the conversation, and need just as much attention if any meaningful discussion is to be had. And no, not everyone has to be involved in these discussions. If you just want to watch anime, just watch anime and keep your talking points to what you can back up. But somewhere, the discussions do need to be had, and some level of gatekeeping is required to anyone making claims or positing their expertise. And while anyone who doesn't want to talk about these aspects should be free not to talk about them, those that do need scrutiny to their points and reasoning.
Oh, this is
that
probably.
goes for any topic.
I
really.
think what did a video on
Art doesn't exist
gatekeeping.
in a vacuum.
So
It's made
yeah.
by people, for people, and art can serve as a lens to look at the culture of those people. But when the lens to those systems and cultures is ignored as a lens and only viewed as a piece of glass, then simply put, it's not going to reflect or reveal anything.
Huh, that was a pretty good line to end off on. Okay, it looks like, yeah, that was a long pause before the Patreon bit. So, all right, that does it for the videos. So yeah, I still have my major problem with that video. All things considered, it's still pretty decent, I think. Definitely better than the Monster Hunter one, which the Monster Hunter one was like, fine, I guess, but obviously very lacking. And yeah, speaking overall, so I because obviously like compared to because Math was just she streamed herself watching literally like all of her videos that are still up and a couple that were unlisted. Um, I did not do that comprehensively. There's two reasons for that. One is that I started doing it in 2012, but I've already gone back and rewatched most of my videos. The ones that I haven't, I need to rewatch something else. Like I reread Inuyashiki in 2022 so that I could write a better comment responding to my Inuyashiki video. Um, so so for right now, to I don't have any videos I can go back and rewatch. Because the ones I still need to rewatch, I basically watched everything else. Is my Your Lie in April video and the March Comes in a Lion and Your Lie in April main character comparison. I need to rewatch Your Lie in April. Flip Flappers, a thematic exploration, probably one of my worst videos. I need to rewatch Flip Flappers, and I'm probably gonna watch Zaria's video on Flip Flappers because at the time it was Zaria's favorite anime, and even if I don't really get much out of Flip Flappers, like having another perspective would be nice. Um, I did a video on Precure a la mode. I'm already planning to rewatch that this year, so it's like I might as well just wait to rewatch that video after. Um, Angel Beats. I need to because I started rewatching my Contrivance of Narrative video, and I was like, oh fuck, I haven't seen Angel Beats in a while. I have rewatched Anohana, not in a while, but I've at least seen it twice. Where Angel Beats I only saw it once, and I figured there's also like a visual novel for Angel Beats that I might as well check out as well. And then the last two are just their SAO videos on my ordinal scale one and my War of Underworld video, which again kind of like the all the mode video where it's like I might as well wait until after I rewatch the thing, even though those videos are definitely going to be like really solid because they're relatively recent. Of these videos, I think the only ones that I would stream, I feel like, are probably the Your Lie in April ones because that's my first video. My first video was Your Lie in April, so I could talk about like the history of that video a bit. And so I feel like it makes more sense to stream that video than the others necessarily. And if I'm doing that one, I might as well do the March Comes in Like a Lion one. Because other than that, like the Flip Peppers one is rough. I might need to be on stream for that just to get through it because it's really hard for me to rewatch my videos. Like it's especially the bad ones. But being on a stream kind of forces me to do it. I feel like the a la mode videos and the Sword online ones. I don't really think I need to rewatch those on stream. Just because they're shorter and they're better. So it's like that was a good video. Like that doesn't I don't especially not the Sword Online ones. Maybe like I said, maybe the Flappers one, maybe the Contrivance of Narrative one. But even then, like they're shorter videos, so they're not necessarily worth a whole stream. But definitely the Your Lie in April one. So if you follow me on Twitter and you see me rewatch Your Lie in April, maybe expect a stream of watching more videos. But I'm not going to be doing that for a while. So like I talked about earlier, I'm working on a video right now that when I come out, I'm gonna do my Patreon. So consider supporting me. I'd really appreciate it. Two, for the time being, for the next like 1 or 2, maybe it's even just one stream, but 1 or 2 weeks. Excuse me. I'm going to do more old video ideas because I still have so many of those. And then after that, in spring, there's going to be a Steam sale, the spring sale. So I think it's in March, but it might be a little later in April. So I'll do the video ideas streams until then, and then I'll buy World's End Club and Death Come True, I think it was called. And then I'll play those Kodaku games on stream. And then if those go well, I will buy Raincode at some point and play Master Detective Archive Raincode on stream. And if those go well, that means I can possibly play Ace Attorney as well. But if not, and people are rude and spoiling them, then that's a no-go, and I'll find something else. And then, just generally speaking, because I mentioned I'm trying to put more work into YouTube because I need money. So I might end up streaming more often, like twice a week. So like I'll play the video game and then do some video work because I have some ideas for videos. that doing the work for I could potentially do on stream. Like anything I need to watch YouTube videos. Like since I've been talking about Promised Neverland, one video idea I've had is because like it's not even just the anime like season 2 that people are negative on. People are really negative about the direction the manga took as well. When I didn't love Promised Neverland, but I thought it was pretty solid and enjoyable the whole way through. So I've considered like a defensive Promised Neverland video where I like watch. I basically like reread the manga and then watch a bunch of like negative Promised Neverland videos on stream, and then for a video in which I like challenge some of the points I don't agree with, if that happens. So that's an example of like a stream that I might do for work, basically like a type of stream that leads into a video, like kind of like what Shaves is doing on his side channel with his Nausicaa dub versus sub comparison. But yeah, so that does it for the stream. Thank you everybody for hopping in and chatting. Good discussion, I think. Lots of discussion because very sensitive and interesting topics. So yeah, thank everybody for the input, and I will see you guys next time.